Chapter 774. Lu Ping followed a thin stream of water. If it weren't for the fact that the stream didn't show any signs of weakening after passing through so many regions, Lu Ping would have lost his patience a long time ago. Who would have thought that the source of the second largest river in the Middle Earth was this hair-thin stream? However, just as Lu Ping followed the stream of water, both his gold core and his bloodline in the core space regained their previous throbbing towards the mysterious power. Lu Ping knew that he was getting closer and closer to his destination. However, at that moment, a loud roar could be heard from upstream of the stream of water. Lu Ping frowned. The small pool of water in the meadow in this direction was getting thinner and thinner, so it should not attract too many cultivators. Why did it sound like there was a chaotic battle ahead? Lu Ping did not want to get involved in this mess, but the perception of the mysterious power in his bloodline clearly told Lu Ping that his destination was right ahead, where the chaotic battle was taking place. Could it be that there was someone like him who could sense the abnormality in the source of the river? Or could it be that the sacred lake was there, and the people fighting had already entered the sacred lake before him? Although there were many wonders in the sacred lake, it was undeniable that the cultivators who entered the sacred lake first would undoubtedly obtain the greatest benefits. There were a total of 100 places where spiritual energy gathered in the sacred lake. Not only did the 100 places have extremely thick spiritual energy to ensure that cultivators could enter reclusive cultivation, each place was also protected by a small-scale, natural-looking magic array. Once a cultivator entered the place, the magic array would automatically activate and other cultivators would no longer be able to enter. The 100 places where spiritual energy gathered gradually increased in intensity, and the outermost place could guarantee that a cultivator's cultivation base would increase by one level in 4 to 5 years of seclusion. In fact, ever since the opening of the sacred fall lake, the cultivators who occupied the deepest part of the lake where the spiritual energy gathered would have a greater harvest. If the area in front of them was really where the sacred settling lake was, then this chaotic battle would definitely attract the attention of other cultivators. Once there were more people, there would undoubtedly be more variables if they wanted to seize the initiative in the sacred settling lake with their individual strength. Lu Ping grabbed the cloudy light 5 elemental cloak with his right hand and tugged on it. The cloak instantly transformed from its previous tight-fitting appearance into a cloak that supported Lu Ping's sea-deceiving art. The cloak turned into a thin stream of water that flowed along the current and headed toward the battlefield. Although the Li-Fire Heavenly Yang sword in Xie Tianyang's hand was somewhat restricted in the river source, it still made him extremely sensitive to the flow of water vapor nearby. With a single sword, Xie Tianyang forced Li Tong, who had transformed into the Heavenly Gate and summoned the torrential sword river, to retreat. The overwhelming true fire even showed signs of drying up the Heavenly River, forcing Li Tong to change the path of the sword river. Something's wrong. Xie Tianyang shouted, causing Ma Chenxi and Li Tong to be stunned. Xie Tianyang then said, "Someone has snuck in. What a brilliant water escape technique. Quick, cut off the water vein of the sacred lake." In a place filled with water vapor, Xie Tianyang, a cultivator who cultivated pure yang fire, was even more sensitive to water vapor than Li Tong, who cultivated water attribute techniques. Ma Chenxi and Li Tong did not doubt him. They had already confirmed the location of the sacred lake and naturally discovered the water vein of the sacred lake that led to the river source. Hence, they joined forces with Xie Tianyang to attack the palm-sized water vein around the sacred lake. Lu Ping had already seen the palm-sized pool of water. At this moment, Lu Ping could already confirm that there was a huge lake space hidden in this small pool of water. The strong feeling in his bloodline also told Lu Ping that the thing he wanted was in the pool of water. This small pool of water was most likely the sacred lake. Otherwise, the 3 people in front of him would not be fighting here. The 3 of them were very powerful. Lu Ping could tell that one of them was from the Tenma people, one was from the Koi race, and the last was a human cultivator. What shocked Lu Ping was the strength these 3 people displayed in the battle. Lu Ping was sure that among the cultivators of the same level, these 3 people should be the most powerful cultivators Lu Ping had ever seen. Lu Ping originally wanted to take advantage of the battle between the 3 people to enter the sacred lake and reap the benefits. Unexpectedly, the cultivator with the fire attribute sword technique that Lu Ping greatly admired discovered Lu Ping's traces when he was only 300 feet away from the sacred lake. Unfortunately, if Lu Ping could get within 200 feet, even if he was discovered by the other 3 and besieged by them, Lu Ping was confident that he would be the first to enter the sacred lake before the 3 of them. Now that things had come to this, Lu Ping could not avoid it. Although the fated Autumn Water Sword combination was still not comparable to the Li Fire Celestial Yang Sword that had condensed 9 treasured restrictions, Lu Ping's water attribute qi was vast. Borrowing the majestic water vapor of the river source, he could restrain Xie Qianyang's fire attribute qi. Lu Ping coveted Li Tong's heavenly gate sword formation. Although he knew that the true essence unity sword technique that he had learned was only a small branch of the heavenly gate sword formation, this did not hinder Lu Ping from coveting the Koi race's supreme divine ability. The flowing sword soared into the sky, and similarly, a Milky Way descended, but with an unstoppable momentum, it collided with Li Tong's Milky Way descends, great divine ability. However, the result caused Li Tong to turn pale with fright. The sword wave set off by Lu Ping's great river flows east had suppressed the sword river summoned from the heavenly gate in one fell swoop. This time Ma Chenxi did not use the breaking wind thorn, but rather puppets. 3 puppets with the strength of core forging charged towards Lu Ping. These 3 puppets, 1 in front and 2 behind, unexpectedly brought about the imposing manner of 10,000 horses galloping. Lu Ping stamped his foot. The river source was full of water, and there was underground water flowing not too deep underground. A stream of water burst out from the ground under Lu Ping's stamp. Then, under the control of the water manipulation art, it successively condensed into 3 tripping ropes on the ground. Ma Chenxi's expression changed, and the seals in her hands continuously changed. The 3 puppets were about to leap over the first tripping rope, but unexpectedly, Lu Ping's control of the water manipulation art had already reached the point of perfection. The 3 tripping ropes sprang up at the same time, and one of the puppet's front legs was tangled by 1 rope. The remaining 2 tripping ropes ruthlessly whipped the puppet horse's body, and the puppet horse fell head first to the ground. A small part of its head was smashed open, and various parts made of spiritual materials were scattered all over the ground. Ma Chenxi looked at his beloved puppet horse and couldn't help but feel distressed. He hurriedly retrieved the remaining 2 puppets, and only then did he raise his head to look at Lu Ping. "It's you?" North Sea cultivator Lu Xianping. At this time, Ma Chenxi had obviously already received the news from his third brother, Ma Chengwang. A core forging stage cultivator who could escape from his third brother's hands was enough to arouse Ma Chenxi's interest. Although Ma Chengwang brought the news to him to tell him to treat it cautiously, and not lose the bigger picture because of a small gain, Ma Chengwang clearly didn't know his brother well enough. Lu Ping made 3 moves in a row and blocked the attacks of the 3 people. Originally, Lu Ping was considering whether to retreat first. After all, if he were to become enemies with these 3 people, Lu Ping really didn't have the confidence to win. Moreover, Ma Chenxi and Li Tong were local tyrants, and they had a group of clansmen waiting for their summons at any time. Unexpectedly, after Lu Ping blocked the attacks of the 3 people, the 3 people unexpectedly didn't attack Lu Ping again. Instead, they retreated together, including Lu Ping, forming a confrontation with each other in a quadrilateral. Today can be regarded as a meeting of the wind and clouds. Xie Tianyang clapped his hands at Lu Ping and said with a smile, "I didn't expect there to be a person like you in North Sea, which has greatly changed our view of the North Sea cultivation world. I heard that North Sea is now dominated by Jinling, Xianling and Songhai sects. May I know which sect you are from?" Lu Ping's heart skipped a beat. In his opinion, most cultivators in the Central Plains were prejudiced against the North Sea cultivation world. They believed that the North Sea cultivation world was a remote and desolate place that couldn't produce any decent cultivators. Therefore, apart from geographical factors, when the Central Plains cultivators talked about the cultivation world, they often ignored the North Sea cultivation world. North Sea cultivators were rare in the Central Plains to begin with, so even if they did, they would usually be looked down upon. Under such circumstances, there should be very few people who understood the North Sea cultivation world, and it could even be said that they disdained to understand the situation of the North Sea cultivation world. But now, Xie Tianyang's question clearly told Lu Ping that the North Sea cultivation world had not faded from the view of the Middle Sea cultivation world. At least, as one of the large sects in Middle Sea, the Xiang Palace was very familiar with the situation of the North Sea cultivation world. Lu Ping smiled with some surprise and said, "Friend, you are quite familiar with my North Sea. I am Lu Xianping of the North Sea Jinling. Greetings to all of you. Are you really a North Sea cultivator?" Li Tong frowned and asked, "There is the primordial crocodile clan in North Sea. I wonder if you know a cultivator called Ao Chuang. Back then this person was quite talented. If he had not died in Middle Sea, he would be a Dharma adept by now and should have some fame." Haha, the famous golden serpent Laozu can be considered famous in North Sea. Lu Ping was more and more certain that in the eyes of these influential forces in the cultivation world, North Sea had never strayed away from the world of cultivation. TSK Golden Serpent Laozu? Li Tong sneered and said, "That stupid crocodile is worthy of calling himself a serpent. How arrogant of him." Lu Ping did not think much of it. Peng Daoren and Jiao Daoren were the two most powerful people among the seventh patriarch when the sky was split open. These two people's fame in the cultivation world far exceeded that of the other 5 ancestors, and they enjoyed a high status in the cultivation world. This primordial crocodile Ao Chuang actually called himself Golden Serpent Laozu, which was indeed a taboo. This was also in North Sea. If it was in Middle Sea, Ao Chuang would be challenged by countless people, and even the primordial crocodile clan would not be able to protect him. Chapter 775. What's with all this nonsense? Since you're here and want to be the fisherman behind us, then we'll have to see if you have the ability to do so. Let's have a battle first. Ma Chenxi was already impatient from waiting. He only knew that the 3 of them had fought with Lu Ping. The person in front of him was indeed a strong opponent. No wonder third brother would specially send someone to inform him. The current him was overflowing with battle intent. He only wanted to have a great battle with the person in front of him. That's good too. It's not easy to encounter so many opponents of equal strength. It's been a long time since I had such a hearty battle. It's a pity to miss it. Xie Qianyang's battle intent was similarly soaring. Then what are you waiting for? The Heavenly Gate swimming fish sword in Li Tong's hand had already lit up. His gaze swept across the 3 of them. A pair of flying swords turned into 2 strange dragons and charged towards Ma Chenxi. Lu Ping did not say a word and took the initiative to attack. According to Lu Ping's temperament, he was not willing to participate in this chaotic battle. It was just that the other 3 people's battle intent was soaring. Lu Ping really could not avoid it, so he simply attacked first and caught the other 3 unprepared. Ma Chenxi was furious. "You dare to attack first. You actually dared to provoke me to attack first." In the cultivation world, the weakest cultivator was usually chosen to attack in group battles. As the saying goes, pick the soft persimmon to pinch. Lu Ping attacked Ma Chenxi the moment he came up. From Ma Chenxi's point of view, Lu Ping clearly thought that Ma Chenxi was the weakest among the 3. How could he accept this? "Haha, brother Ma, I think brother Lu's choice is not bad. He comes from the North Sea and is definitely not familiar with the cultivation world of the Central Plains. Therefore his choice is more fair. Brother Ma, you are undoubtedly the weakest in his eyes. Besides, Looking at Ma Chenxi's furious expression, Xie Tianyang was especially excited. However, before he could finish speaking, Lu Ping's flowing sword had already arrived with lightning speed. The dense sword light was like a rain that filled the sky. When it landed in front of Xie Tianyang, it turned into countless threads that wrapped around him. Each of the inconspicuous raindrops contained a sharp strand of sword qi. They wandered around Xie Tianyang's body, searching for any possible loopholes in his defense and waiting to strike. Seep sword art. It was another great divine sword technique. What a strange swordsmanship. I wonder if you have taken me into consideration as well. What kind of swordsmanship are you going to teach me? Li Tong was also a great swordsman. When he saw Lu Ping execute the seeping water sword art, he was naturally able to sense the extraordinariness of this great divine swordsmanship. As a result, he was overjoyed and impatiently went forward to ask for guidance. Just as Li Tong finished speaking, he saw Lu Ping raise his hand towards the depths of the river source. Suddenly, a rumbling sound came from the underground as well as from the lake not far away. Water attribute great divine art. Fine, I will compete with you in divine arts today. Li Tong and Lu Ping were the same. They both cultivated the flood dragon bloodline's water attribute great divine art. Naturally, he could sense the great divine art that Lu Ping was executing from Lu Ping's movements. A white line suddenly rose in the distance. At this time, the water in the lake of the river source was drawn over by Lu Ping. The underground water vein also suddenly broke through the surface of the ground, creating a water pillar that was several feet high. The two fused together and formed a huge wave that swept towards Li Tong. Water attribute great divine art, one of the North Sea's 12 orthodox arts, blue tide art. Li Tong was from the Koi clan and originally cultivated the water attribute great divine art. Although he was famous for his swordsmanship, this was something that belonged to an ordinary talent. How could he fall behind others? Li Tong kept the flying sword in his hand and then made a strange hand sign with both hands. Then he scooped up the wave that was coming from the distance. Lu Ping suddenly felt that the rising tide was being pulled by a hidden force and wanted to escape from Lu Ping's control. Sure enough, he was worthy of being a genius cultivator of the Koi clan. However, it was not easy for him to break Lu Ping's great divine art so easily. However, before Lu Ping could fight with Li Tong, Ma Chenxi, who was on the other side, had already blocked Lu Ping's dual flying sword strangulation. Her wind-breaking stab had already counterattacked Lu Ping. Xie Tianyang and Lu Ping's flowing sword collided. Then, the Li Fire Heavenly Yang sword once again ignited with true fire and attacked. However, Xie Tianyang's counterattack was not against Lu Ping but Ma Chenxi. Clang. The wind-breaking stab flew back. The true fire on the Li Fire Heavenly Yang sword was almost extinguished by the strong wind brought by the wind-breaking stab. Xie Tianyang, I didn't hit you. Why are you blocking me? Ma Chenxi threw out the wind-breaking stab. This time it was aimed at Xie Tianyang. Haha, we agreed that it would be a battle royale. Naturally, I will fight whoever I don't like. Xie Tianyang had just finished speaking when he exclaimed, Are you kidding me? You can't play like this. Lu Ping's flowing sword didn't let Xie Tianyang off just because he had helped him out. The flying sword was raised and countless white waves rose up. It was accompanied by sword whistles that pierced through spiritual sense. Under the support of Lu Ping's tyrannical spiritual sense, the Li Fire Heavenly Yang sword in Xie Tianyang's hand trembled. The white flames on the sword flickered and were almost extinguished. Xie Tianyang broke out in a cold sweat. What kind of sword technique is this? It's so strange. Lu Ping was about to reply when the wind-breaking stab that Ma Chenxi had shot into the central plains suddenly changed direction, heading straight for Lu Ping's chest. Li Tong suddenly struck out with his sword, sending the flowing long sword flying with a single strike. Then, the long sword seemed to have transformed into a swimming fish, leaping into the surging waves. Then it suddenly shot out from under Ma Chenxi's feet. Ma Chenxi leaped back. Li Tong was about to chase after her, but he suddenly let out a strange cry. He leaned back and flipped to the side. A dark blue sword light narrowly brushed past his shoulder. It almost broke through his protective aura and cut through his clothes. Formless sword technique, formless sword. Xie Tianyang exclaimed. This was the sword technique that made the North Sea's Fei Ling sect famous. I didn't think that after the Fei Ling sect was destroyed, this sword technique would be passed down in fellows' hands. As he spoke, Li Tong, who had dodged the nether aqua sword, pushed his hands towards Xie Tianyang. An invisible force, along with a huge wave of water, roared towards Xie Tianyang's back. The four of them engaged in a chaotic battle, not differentiating between friend and foe. They only did their best to attack and defend. Lu Ping did not fall into a disadvantageous position in the battle, but he did not use his full strength either. However, Lu Ping also knew that the three of them did not use their respective trump cards either. Right now, everyone was just measuring each other's conventional strength. However, Lu Ping had other ideas at this time. Feeling the increasingly intense call from his bloodline, Lu Ping suddenly made up his mind. He had to be the first to enter the sacred lake. The chaotic battle between the four of them was so huge that it had already attracted the attention of many cultivators who had entered the sacred lake. Lu Ping's divine will had already discovered that there were already many cultivators hiding in the surroundings. However, the battle between the four of them far exceeded that of cultivators of the same level. In addition, there was the fourth young master of the Pegasus clan, the Sky Gate Sword Li Tong of the Koi clan, and one of the 6 divine swords of the Purple Sun Palace. Each of these 3 people had a fearsome background and were figures who could summon wind and rain in the cultivation world. Naturally, no one would stand out at this time. Back then, Lu Ping, who was able to stand on equal footing with the other 3 and did not fall into a disadvantageous position in the chaotic battle, naturally became the focus of the spectators. Those who knew Lu Ping's identity began to explain Lu Ping's origins to the people who asked them. It was believed that after this battle, the name of the North Sea Jinling cultivator, Lu Xianping, would officially be completely spread among the major sects of the Central Plains. At this time, although Lu Ping was also enjoying this kind of exchange of pointers between opponents of the same level and strength, he was not immersed in this kind of awe-inspiring battle intent. He was not like the other 3. Not to mention that he did not have the support of a tyrannical force behind him. Even if Jinling really wanted to be Lu Ping's shield, how many people here could admit it? At the end of the day, Jinling was far from being comparable to famous sects like the Tenma people, the Koi clan, and the Purple Sun Palace. The Changlu sword that was originally slashing towards Xie Tianyang suddenly disappeared, and when it reappeared, it was already next to Ma Chenxi. The beautiful autumn water sword's whirling chain attack, the Changlu sword's seeping sword technique, these 2 great magical powers were displayed together. One was incisive and aggressive while the other was gradual. Ma Chenxi cursed angrily, "Fuck, he's playing for real." Lu Ping did not care how Ma Chenxi resisted, and stretched out his hand to point towards the sky. Unknowingly, the originally clear and cloudless river source suddenly condensed into a dark cloud above. Rays of bluish-purple flashes stretched and contracted in the cloud, and then fell towards Li Tong all at once. Li Tong did not expect Lu Ping to suddenly use such a fierce method. While frantically resisting the lightning that fell from the sky, he shouted, "Yining lightning, you actually know lightning magical powers." If it was only 1 or 2 rays of Yining lightning, Li Tong naturally would not take it seriously, but when dozens of Yining lightning fell all at once, Li Tong had no choice but to take it seriously. Every time Li Tong tried to escape from the lightning net, he would see a ray of blue sword light flying over, forcing Li Tong into the lightning net again. Not good, he wants to enter Sacred Lake first. Xie Tianyang immediately realized where Lu Ping's goal was. Although Lu Ping used all his magical powers, these methods obviously could not cause any harm to Ma Chenxi and Li Tong. It would only entangle the two of them and make them unable to use their respective methods. Xie Tianyang straightened the Li Fire Heavenly Sun Sword, and his whole body was suddenly surrounded by a ball of true fire. Lu Ping narrowed his eyes and said fiercely in his heart, "True Sun Fire, Heaven Level High Grade." Lu Ping stretched out his hand and patted his chest, and a small wind banner was grabbed by Lu Ping and gently waved towards Xie Tianyang. Xie Tianyang originally wanted to rely on the true sun fire that he had yet to successfully cultivate to rush towards Lu Ping, but he saw Lu Ping wave a small banner at him, and then he saw Lu Ping's face suddenly turn pale. Although Xie Tianyang did not know what method Lu Ping had used, he also realized that it was not good. He wanted to withdraw and retreat, but he suddenly felt as if his divine will was suddenly smashed by someone with a hammer. This blow was even fiercer than the sword howl divine power that Lu Ping had displayed previously. Xie Tianyang, who was retreating, suddenly staggered and almost fell to the ground. When he finally regained his senses, he saw that Lu Ping had suddenly turned into a ball of flowing water and poured into the palm-sized sacred lake under his feet. Chapter 776. At the source of the river, the outcome of what happened in front of Lake Fallen was beyond everyone's expectations. An unknown North Sea cultivator who was rumored to be from North Sea Jinling and was called Lu Xianping, actually snatched the first spot to enter Lake Fallen from Ma Chenxi, Li Tong and Xie Tianyang, who were publicly acknowledged to be invincible among cultivators of the same level. When the three of them saw that Lu Ping actually entered Lake Fallen first, they were stunned for a moment. After a while, Ma Chenxi suddenly flew into a rage. "Damn it, we've been tricked by this kid. He actually entered Lake Fallen before us." "Tricked? If you're so capable, why didn't you, Ma Chenxi, go in first just now?" Xie Tianyang, whose paleness was gradually fading, had a sickly bright red face. It was obvious that he had been shaken quite badly by Lu Ping's banner just now. Li Tong didn't say a word. This time he learned from Lu Ping. With a flash of light, he was about to rush into Lake Fallen. Ma Chenxi had suffered a loss earlier, so she had been waiting there for a long time. Before Li Tong's escape light reached the middle of the sacred settling lake, there was a tremor in the void, and Li Tong staggered out of the escape light. "Don't even think about it," Ma Chenxi shouted at Li Tong fiercely. Before Li Tong could flare up, Xie Tianyang shouted, "Oh no, they're going to rush over." Lu Ping entering Lake Fallen first finally stirred the nerves of the surrounding cultivators who were spying on them. Li Tong and Ma Chenxi scanned with their spiritual force and discovered that there were indeed 2 cultivators coming over from the left and right. Immediately they found an outlet to vent their anger. Ma Chenxi shouted, "Go to hell." Li Tong also snorted coldly and attacked together with Ma Chenxi, sending the 2 flying. When they landed on the ground, they were already spurting blood. The Tenma people and Khoi clan cultivators happened to be at the side, so they immediately went forward to beat the drowning dogs. It looked like the 2 of them were going to die soon. However, just as the 2 of them attacked, Li Tong said in a low voice, "We've been tricked again." Ma Chenxi immediately realized that something was wrong. She stomped her foot fiercely and the entire ground shook. The palm-sized sage lake suddenly surged with waves that were tens of feet high. Li Tong also took the opportunity to jump into the waves with the flying sword in his hand, intending to fish in troubled waters. However, as fast as the 2 of them were, they were still 1 step behind Xie Tianyang. The heavenly sun sword in Xie Tianyang's hand transformed into a 30-meter-long fire dragon. The fire dragon breathed out raging flames, blocking the 2's attacks. Xie Tianyang, who had turned into a man of fire, had already escaped into Saintly Lake. All that was left was the white mist that rose from the water and fire on the lake's surface. Ma Chenxi and Li Tong exchanged glances. By then, the cultivators who were spying on them from the periphery had become increasingly restless. Saintly Lake was right before their eyes, but only 2 out of the 4 top-notch experts from earlier were left. A good number of cultivators had already revealed themselves and were moving towards them. It was clear that they wanted to enter Saintly Lake. The 2 of them looked at the cultivators from Western Wilderness Palace who were hiding behind the crowd. They saw that the surrounding cultivators actually had the guts to group up and approach the 2 of them. This was something that had never happened before in the past when the river source opened up. Although the cultivators from the Heavenly Horse clan and Koi clan were still at a disadvantage in terms of numbers, they would often be able to defeat the cultivators who were in a state of disunity. Thus, the 2 clans would often be able to obtain the greatest harvest in the competition for Saintly Lake. At that very moment, both Ma Chenxi and Li Tong wanted to enter Saintly Lake. However, the key question was which one of them would enter first. Thus, they could only confront each other. However, it was clear that the cultivators in the periphery did not want to continue watching the show. If the 2 of them were to continue blocking the entrance, they would end up incurring the wrath of the masses. Even if they had a group of cultivators under them, it would be useless. The 2 of them exchanged glances. Then Li Tong transformed into a wave of water while Ma Chenxi created a gust of wind. The 2 of them entered Saintly Lake together. After the 2 of them entered Saintly Lake, the cultivators who had been restless earlier instantly lost their scruples. Someone shouted out first and tens of cultivators revealed themselves from every direction as they rushed towards the entrance. However, the entrance to Saintly Lake was too small. It was impossible for tens of cultivators to enter. Thus, before the tens of cultivators could even reach the sky above Saintly Lake, a chaotic battle had already broken out between them. This time it was truly a chaotic battle. Tens of cultivators fought each other to enter Saintly Lake first. Several li away, more and more cultivators were still rushing over. The scale of the chaotic battle continued to expand. After Lu Ping smashed into Saintly Lake, the special and mysterious power that came from the depths of the lake caused Lu Ping's heart to beat violently twice. However, the mysterious power immediately disappeared. No matter how hard Lu Ping searched, he could no longer sense the existence of the mysterious power. Lu Ping suppressed his curiosity and spread out his divine sense to observe the situation in Saintly Lake. At the same time, he quickly dived into the depths of Saintly Lake according to the rumors circulating in the cultivation world of Western Wilderness. Lu Ping's divine sense immediately sensed an area with an extremely thick spiritual energy. Additionally, there was also an indescribable power within the area. Perhaps, this power was the reason why a cultivator's cultivation base could rise by at least 1 level after 4 to 5 years of cultivation retreat. Lu Ping's eyes shone with a faint cyan light. He could see a seemingly naturally formed magic array around the spiritual energy gathering ground. Lu Ping knew that the magic array was used to protect the cultivators who were in cultivation retreat. The moment a cultivator entered the spiritual energy gathering ground, the magic array would immediately activate. Unless the cultivator opened it from the inside, it would be extremely difficult for external forces to break the magic array and threaten the cultivator inside. As the spiritual energy gathering ground was so close to the surface of the lake, it was not within Lu Ping's consideration. Lu Ping utilized the water manipulation technique and an undercurrent flowed out from behind him, pushing Lu Ping to dive deeper into the lake. Lu Ping dived for nearly 100 zhang. Along the way, Lu Ping's divine sense had already sensed 7 to 8 spiritual energy gathering grounds. Although Saintly Lake was shaped like a funnel, the interior of the lake was very large. Although Lu Ping was heading towards the deepest part of the lake, his divine sense could only cover a very small part of the lake. Legend had it that Saintly Lake was 9,900 zhang deep. If a cultivator's cultivation base was not high enough, they would not be able to withstand the immense water pressure at the depths of 9,900 zhang. Although Lu Ping's cultivation base was high, he was unwilling to waste his primary energy on resisting the water pressure. Instead, he placed the water avoidance pearl on top of his head. Instantly, the water pressure around him lessened and the rate at which he was diving down increased. Lu Ping found that the lake was quiet and there was no danger. Thus, he slowly retracted his divine sense. He only guarded the area within a radius of tens of zhang. At the same time, he channeled the secret divine sense cultivation technique to nourish his divine sense, which had suffered some damage when he fought against Xie Tianyang earlier. Lu Ping was still holding the small flag that he had used to assist in casting the secret divine sense cultivation technique. This was the small flag that Lu Ping had obtained from a cave in the secret land of Jinling's inheritance. Previously, Lu Ping had not been able to understand the mystery of this small flag. It was only because this small flag had many benefits for Lu Ping's divine sense cultivation and cultivation that he had kept it by his side. At the same time, he was also trying to discover the secret hidden within the small flag. Lu Ping had once heard some strange stories about the senior Jinling from Lu Tianling in Laozu. He had tried to discover the identity of the senior Jinling who had left the small flag in the cave, but unfortunately he had not been able to do so. Lu Ping's divine sense cultivation had become more and more refined over the years. Now, his divine sense cultivation was not much different from those cultivators at the peak of the early Dharma Law stage. As one of the 6 great swordsmen of the 3rd generation of Xiang Palace cultivators, Xie Tianyang's divine sense cultivation was naturally not bad. Moreover, because he was a sword cultivator, his divine sense also contained a sharp power similar to sword qi. When competing with the divine sense of cultivators of the same level, he was rarely at a disadvantage. However, this time he had suffered 2 consecutive losses in the hands of Lu Ping. Especially the second time, Lu Ping had shaken his divine sense with the help of the small flag. It was clear that Lu Ping's current divine sense cultivation was terrifying. At this moment, Lu Ping's divine sense detected a sound coming from the surface of the sacred lake. Another cultivator had entered the sacred lake, but he did not know which of the 3 it was this time, Ma Chenxi, Li Tong, or Xie Tianyang. However, in Lu Ping's opinion, among the 3 of them, Xie Tianyang was the most likely to enter first. Compared to the other 2, Xie Tianyang gave Lu Ping a much more dangerous feeling. This was also why Lu Ping had used the divine sense secret technique to attack him just now. Lu Ping dove down 100 feet again. At this time, the information gathered by his divine sense surprised Lu Ping. The water-repelling pearl was suspended above his head, pushing away all the surrounding lake water and forming a circular shield. As Lu Ping dove into the shield, he took out a pieced-together map fragment from his storage magic tool. At this time, Lu Ping could not care less about the discomfort caused by using the divine sense secret technique just now. He tried his best to spread his divine sense in all directions. At the same time, his eyes were fixed on the map fragment in his hand, as if he was confirming something with the surrounding scenery in the lake. Back then, Lu Ping had obtained more than half of the map fragment from Jinren Jinli. After combining it with the other half of the map fragment that Lu Ping had obtained from the other koi demon cultivator that had died in Lu Ping's hands a few days ago, Lu Ping originally thought that this map was just used to guide and deduce the location of the sacred lake. Unexpectedly, the latter part of the map was very similar to the shape of the terrain at the bottom of the sacred lake. Although Lu Ping was the first to enter the lake, it was still not easy to find the best spots in the lake. Although it was funnel-shaped and the best spots were in the deepest part of the lake, it wasn't easy to find them. Lu Ping was the first to enter the lake. Lu Ping had now dove more than 2,000 feet, but he had only found a total of 13 or 14 spirit gathering places. Every time the river source opened, the spirit gathering places in the sacred lake were constantly changing, but there were at least 20 spirit gathering places at the bottom of the lake within 2,000 feet. It was obvious that these spirit gathering places were not easy to find. The map fragment in Lu Ping's hand clearly showed the terrain and scenery of the sacred lake. It also showed the direction of the undercurrents in the sacred lake. The constantly changing spirit gathering places in the sacred lake were closely related to the direction of the undercurrents in the lake. Now that Lu Ping had this map, he could deduce the location of most of the spirit gathering places through the direction of the undercurrents. Chapter 777. Although these spirit gathering places weren't of much use to Lu Ping alone, they were especially important to clans like the Koi Carp clan and Pegasus clan that had sent a large number of clansmen into the lake. Think about it, in just 4 to 5 years, dozens of late core forging adepts from these 2 clans had collectively increased their cultivation by 1 level. This was a huge boost to the strength of these 2 clans. Although it did not take hundreds of years for late core forging adepts to advance a level like Dharma adepts, it was normal for them to take decades. If they encountered a serious bottleneck, it was not uncommon for them to be delayed for hundreds of years. Therefore, the importance of the sacred lake did not lie in the promotion of individual cultivators, but in whether there was a monopoly of 1 or 2 clans. Lu Ping finally understood why the Koi clan and the Pegasus clan had set up so many checkpoints on the periphery of the river source. They did not hesitate to offend a large number of cultivators in order to stop them from entering the river source. Every time the sacred lake opened, hundreds of people would sneak into the river source, but the ones who benefited the most were always the Pegasus and the Koi clan. However, these 2 clans obviously did not want to push things too far. Otherwise they would not have allowed so many cultivators to enter. Every time the two clans added up, they would only send 50 to 60 people into the river source. In the end, only 40 people from the two clans would be able to get 100 spots. Therefore, once the two clans kept a close eye on the river source just like this time, it would attract the suspicion of the other clans in the cultivation world. The Western Wilderness Palace sending cultivators into the river source to instigate other cultivators to rebel against the two clans was a small matter. The key was that even the Jianghu Palace had sent one of the 6 most outstanding swordsmen among their third-generation disciples into the river source. Although the map was precious, Lu Ping and Samling could only occupy 4 spots at most. Now, Lu Ping had only dived 300 feet into the lake and was still far from the bottom, so he did not have to worry about the allocation of spots. He directly followed the map and began to calculate the locations of the places with the richest spiritual energy at the bottom of the lake. Because of the water-repelling pearl, Lu Ping dived very quickly in the sacred lake. He was confident that even Li Tong in his original form might not have such an ability. He had to determine the location of Samling before others found him. Strictly speaking, Samling's background was even more noble than Ma Chenxi and Li Tong. In this sacred lake, there was no reason for Lu Ping not to plan for them. Lu Ping dived all the way to a depth of 700 feet. Using the map, he found 3 spirit-gathering places that were extremely close to each other due to the influence of the undercurrent. Along the way, Lu Ping had already discovered more than 50 to 60 places with spiritual energy. Including the places that Lu Ping had yet to discover, there were at least 70 places. In this way, these 3 places with spiritual energy could be ranked in the 20th to 30th place in the entire sacred lake. They were considered very good places. Moreover, Samling's current cultivation was at the 6th stage of the core forging realm. It was already a luxury for him to use such a good place with spiritual energy. Anything better would be a waste. Lu Ping released Samling from the House of Gold and instructed them to cultivate in seclusion in the place with peace of mind. There was no need for Lu Ping to worry about anything else. With Samling's current strength, even a late-stage core forging realm cultivator would be helpless against them if they joined forces. If Samling advanced to the late-stage core forging realm at the same time, his strength would definitely increase greatly. At that time, even if he encountered people like Ma Chenxi and Li Tong, he would still be able to escape unscathed. Lu Ping looked at the 3 places with spiritual energy. After Samling entered, the outer protective array immediately activated. Then the entire place returned to the same background as the surrounding lake bottom. If one did not look carefully, it would be difficult for a cultivator to discover the existence of a spiritual energy. Even if they discovered it, it would be extremely difficult to break the protective array. After Lu Ping made arrangements for Samling, he sped up his dive again. At this time, Lu Ping had already sensed that the entire sacred lake had begun to shake. At the same time, a rumbling sound could be heard from the lake above his head. Lu Ping knew that this was because a large number of cultivators had begun to enter the sacred lake. At this time, the cultivators who had entered the sacred lake could be said to be the best among their peers after the elimination of the Pegasus and Koi Carp clans, the killing in the fog array, and the chaotic battle at the river source. These cultivators could be said to be the best among their peers. They were the seeds that had the hope of advancing to the Dharma manifestation realm in the future. However, even these cultivators added up to nearly 200 people. After entering the sacred lake all at once, this place became the last place for them to compete. Although there had always been 100 places with spiritual energy in the sacred lake for cultivators to choose from, it was extremely difficult to find all 100 places with spiritual energy. Among them, only the Tenma people and the Koi Carp clan had always occupied about 2/5 of the places in the sacred lake. Hence, they had done some research on the distribution of the places with spiritual energy in the sacred lake. After entering the sacred lake, other cultivators had to spend time and effort to find places with spiritual energy in addition to dealing with the challenges of other cultivators. Therefore, although many cultivators understood that the best places to gather spirit energy were in the depths of the sacred settling lake, once a place was found, even if it was only 1,000 to 2,000 feet away from the lake surface and was considered inferior among all the places to gather spirit energy, they had no choice but to take it for themselves. They were afraid that if they were too arrogant and missed this place, they might not be lucky enough to find another place to gather spirit energy when they went deeper. When that time came, they would return to look for the previous place, only to find that it had already been occupied by people who came later. That would truly be a loss that did not make up for the gains. After Lu Ping and Xie Tianyang entered the sacred lake before Ma Chenxi and Li Tong, Ma Chenxi and Li Tong were not particularly upset. This was because they knew that the few places with spiritual energy in the depths of the sacred lake were extremely difficult to find. The two clans had also spent thousands of years to grasp some of the patterns of the changes in the last few places with spiritual energy. During the opening process of the sacred lake in history, there were often situations where the 100 places with spiritual energy were not completely discovered. Most of these places with spiritual energy that had not been discovered were at the deepest part of the lake, which was 800 to 900 feet deep. Although Lu Ping and Xie Tianyang were one step ahead, it would be a waste if they could not find the best place with spiritual energy. When Lu Ping was more than 800 feet down, he suddenly realized that the color of the lake water around him was gradually changing. Lu Ping was slightly stunned. The lake water around him had been dyed a faint red, and Lu Ping discovered through his divine telekinesis that the faint red lake water actually contained traces of extremely pure energy although it was faint. Lu Ping circulated the North Sea wave listening technique in his body, and the energy contained in the surrounding seawater immediately gathered into Lu Ping's body. With a little refinement, it turned into a pure and vigorous trace of spiritual essence in Lu Ping's body. Lu Ping even felt that the bloodline in his body seemed to be improving slightly as the trace of energy was refined. However, even so, it was enough to shock Lu Ping. The improvement of bloodline had always been extremely difficult. One only needed to look at the top demon clan members who claimed to have the direct bloodline of the 7th patriarch to know the importance of bloodline. Although Lu Ping did not search carefully, it was still a little surprising that he only found 2 places with spiritual energy at the bottom of the lake, which was 800 feet deep. Although the deeper the lake, the higher the quality of the place with spiritual energy, and the harder it was to be found, it still surprised Lu Ping that there were only 2 places with spiritual energy at the bottom of the lake. It should be known that the sacred settling lake was shaped like a funnel. The deeper the sacred settling lake, the smaller the area at the bottom. However, the places with spiritual energy became more hidden. Lu Ping only hesitated for a moment, then directly explored the bottom of the lake. It was already dark all around. Even the 3 pure eyes could only see a distance of a few dozen feet in this situation. Although the divine telekinesis was greatly affected at the bottom of the lake, the greater impact came from the lake water's restraint on the divine telekinesis. At this time, at a depth of more than 600 feet, Ma Chenxi and Li Tong each had a treasure hanging above their heads. They were like arrows that had left the bow, overtaking Xie Tianyang, who was staring at the two of them in shock. Xie Tianyang also had a treasure hanging above his head. This treasure was called the water purification bowl. Originally, Xie Tianyang thought that even if he had a fire attribute cultivation and was greatly affected in the sacred settling lake, he would not fall behind the others with this treasure that was rumored to have been obtained from the East Sea Crystal Palace. However, he did not expect that Ma Chenxi and Li Tong also had a water escape treasure that was not inferior to Xie Tianyang's water purification bowl. In terms of familiarity with the situation in the sacred settling lake, Ma Chenxi and Li Tong were obviously better. Xie Tianyang shook his head helplessly. Although he tried his best to catch up, the distance between him and Ma Chenxi and Li Tong was getting further and further away. They gradually disappeared into the depths of the dark lake. The next one is that Lu Shenping from the North Sea. However, this guy dives quite fast. He's already 700 feet down, but he still hasn't caught up. Ma Chenxi looked back at Xie Tianyang, who was already out of sight, and said to Li Tong, who was beside her, "This person is from the North Sea and is also proficient in water attribute spells. It's hard to guarantee that he doesn't have a water-repelling treasure like you and me. It will be extremely difficult to catch up to this person." Li Tong previously fought with Lu Ping, so he had a deeper understanding of Lu Ping's water attribute spells. He had some doubts about being able to catch up to Lu Ping as soon as possible. So what? There are only 5 spiritual gathering places at the bottom of the lake at a depth of 900 feet, and every one of them is extremely difficult to find. Even if he dives down to the bottom of the lake at a depth of 900 feet and can't find anything, wouldn't it be a waste of time? Ma Chenxi disapproved of Li Tong's cautiousness. The spiritual gathering places are a small matter. After all, there are only 5 spiritual gathering places at the bottom of the lake at a depth of 900 feet. The two of us can't occupy all of them. What I'm worried about is whether our actions at the bottom of the lake this time will be seen through by him. This time, Ma Chenxi did not answer immediately. Instead, she thought for a moment before replying, "It shouldn't be. The Flood Dragon Bloodstone may have appeared long ago, but it was discovered by us last time. It can be seen that this matter is extremely secretive. After Jin Wuyo's death, There may be others who know about this matter, but the ones who truly know where the Flood Dragon Bloodstone appears are only my father and your teacher, so you can rest assured. Chapter 778. Strange, we're already at a depth of more than 8,000 feet, why haven't we caught up with Lu Xianping yet? It's fine if he dives faster than us, but could it be that he has the confidence to find a spiritual energy gathering ground at a depth of 9,000 feet? Ma Chenxi asked with uncertainty as she probed the surroundings suspiciously. It's hard to say. This person's water attribute abilities are actually not weaker than my Koi clan. If he also has a treasure that can assist in escaping through water, coupled with the advantage of entering Sacred Lake first, it wouldn't be strange for him to be able to dive 9,000 feet before us. Li Tong casually answered Ma Chenxi's question, then said, but what I find strange is that at a depth of 7,000 feet, there are actually 3 spiritual energy gathering grounds that have already closed. Could it be that someone else entered Sacred Lake before Lu Xianping? Ma Chenxi said disapprovingly, what's so strange about that? Sacred Lake might not have been discovered by the two of us first. There's no lack of lucky people in this world, just like Lu Xianping. Before this, neither of us would have thought that a cultivator from the North Sea would actually have such cultivation. Li Tong still had some doubts. He raised his eyebrows and said, do you think that Lu Xianping is in one of the 3 spiritual energy gathering grounds? Ma Chenxi snorted disdainfully and said, if this person found a seclusion ground so easily, he wouldn't have the qualifications to be mentioned in the same breath as us in the future. Although Li Tong had a look of agreement on his face, he still said, after all, he's from the North Sea. Perhaps to him, a spiritual energy gathering ground 7,000 feet deep is already an amazing place. Ma Chenxi was about to say something, but her divine sense suddenly froze. She then looked down and suddenly said, hey, there's light down there. At this time, Li Tong also discovered the abnormality at the bottom of the lake. After looking in the direction that Ma Chenxi was looking at, he asked with some uncertainty, it seems to be a pearl. It must be the water escape treasure that Lu Xianping used. However, there are many types of pearl-type treasures, I don't know which one it is. As expected, he didn't randomly choose a seclusion ground. Quick, follow him. We were tricked by him earlier, so we must make him suffer a loss this time. Lu Ping finally slowed down after diving to the bottom of the 9,000 feet deep lake. Although he didn't have to worry about the heavy pressure at the bottom of the lake with the waterproof moon pearl, it was still extremely difficult for Lu Ping to calculate the best places to gather spirit qi. According to the map in Lu Ping's hand, there should be 5 places of gathering spirit qi here. However, after the lake reached 9,000 feet deep, the undercurrent at the bottom of the lake suddenly became unpredictable and powerful. Lu Ping used the water manipulation spell through the water-repellent pearl to barely prevent himself from being swept away by the undercurrent. These strange undercurrents were even able to affect Lu Ping's divine sense. Lu Ping seemed to feel that after his divine sense left his body, it went through all kinds of impacts, compression and deformation. His judgment of the situation at the bottom of the lake had long lost its reality. This was also an important reason why it was difficult for Lu Ping to determine the location of the spirit qi through the undercurrent at the bottom of the lake. Lu Ping did his best to control his divine sense. He hoped that by reducing the range of his divine sense's detection, he could strengthen his control over his divine sense and get rid of the influence of the surrounding undercurrent on his divine sense. At this time, Lu Ping keenly sensed that there was an extremely weak undercurrent coming directly towards the top of his head. Different from the other undercurrents, this undercurrent contained a sharp qi. Lu Ping, who had experienced life and death several times, could even sense a trace of killing intent from this undercurrent. Someone was launching a sneak attack. Due to the influence of the undercurrent on the divine sense and the fact that Lu Ping was wholeheartedly searching for the spirit qi at the bottom of the lake, he did not notice that Ma Chenxi and Li Tong had already quietly dived to the top of the lake that was only a few hundred feet away from him. Ma Chenxi watched as his breaking wind stinger was about to stab into Lu Ping's head. Although there was a trace of pity in his eyes, it was more of the ruthlessness of killing off a competitor. Although Li Tong did not make a move, he did not make a sound to stop them either. He only looked expressionlessly at Lu Ping, who was constantly searching for something below. Ma Chenxi was very confident that he could seriously injure Lu Ping or even kill him. This was because he was very clear that at the bottom of the sacred lake, which was 900 feet deep, there were undercurrents that could completely distort a cultivator's divine sense. This caused a cultivator's divine sense, which originally covered a radius of a few miles, to be unable to grasp the situation outside of a few hundred feet. This provided the most convenient condition for Ma Chenxi to launch a sneak attack. However, Ma Chenxi still underestimated the strength of Lu Ping's divine sense and the intuition that was honed from life and death. The breaking wind stinger pierced through the top of Lu Ping's head. Lu Ping did not even have the time to resist in the slightest. Ma Chenxi's face was filled with joy, and Li Tong was also startled. "Too easy," Li Tong murmured. Ma Chenxi heard that Li Tong's words seemed to be somewhat disdainful. Just as he was about to refute, his eyes suddenly widened, as if he had discovered something unbelievable. Li Tong looked down and saw that Lu Ping, who should have died long ago after the breaking wind stinger pierced through his head, suddenly raised his head and smiled at the two people who were hidden in the dark lake. The corner of his mouth was filled with endless ridicule. "We've been tricked." Ma Chenxi secretly cursed, and then quickly became alert with Li Tong. They saw that Lu Ping in the distance suddenly disintegrated into a pool of water, and completely merged with the surrounding lake water. Art of sea deception. At the source of the river, at the bottom of the sacred Sunset Lake, Lu Ping displayed the power of this set of techniques to the extreme, making Ma Chenxi and Li Tong unable to detect whether it was real or fake. The water moon avoiding pearl that was originally hanging above Lu Ping's head and emitting a faint light, causing Lu Ping's figure to be exposed, suddenly disappeared in front of Ma Chenxi and Li Tong. The entire bottom of the lake turned completely dark. Ma Chenxi and Li Tong's hearts suddenly sank. Only then did they realize that although Lu Ping's divine sense was imprisoned at the bottom of the sacred Sunset Lake, so he could not discover them, their divine sense was also distorted, so they could not discover the hidden Lu Ping. Ma Chenxi and Li Tong's sneak attack previously was only done by Ma Chenxi and Li Tong in the dark, while Lu Ping was in the light. But now the situation had changed and it was Lu Ping in the dark while the two of them were in the light. Thinking about how Lu Ping was able to sneak 300 feet away from them before he was discovered, and thinking about how Xie Tianyang suffered 2 consecutive losses in the hands of Lu Ping, Ma Chenxi and Li Tong's hearts could not help but sink again. At this time, Lu Ping was like a venomous snake hidden in the dark, and could give them a fatal blow at any time the moment they let their guard down. Strictly speaking, this time, Lu Ping took the opportunity of traveling to the Central Plains to come to the Western Wilderness to kill Ma Chenxi. The fourth young master of the Tenma People's clan leader, Ma Zhen, was the culprit behind the extermination of the Cyan Fox clan. He was also one of the conditions for the Cyan Fox to agree to work under Lu Ping. The reason was very simple and cliché. Although the fourth young master of the Tenma people was overflowing with talent, he was also the biggest foppish son of the Tenma people. Like most foppish sons, although this fourth young master of the Tenma people was obsessed with cultivation, he was equally obsessed with women. The Fox clan was originally a place where the Beastkin cultivators produced beautiful women, and the Cyan Fox clan was the most seductive clan among the Fox clan. Unfortunately, the Fox clan was located in the Western Wilderness. Although it was also a rather powerful force among the Beastkin cultivators in the Western Wilderness, how could it compete with the number 1 Tenma people among the 3 royal clans in the Western Wilderness? Therefore, the Fox clan naturally became the fourth young master's hunting ground. It just so happened that the beautiful Cyan Fox clan was seen by the fourth young master of the Ma family during one of his trips, and he was instantly stunned. What happened next was obvious. After being rejected by the Cyan Fox clan, the fourth young master of the Ma family naturally wouldn't let the matter rest, and he repeatedly came to harass the Cyan Fox clan. The Fox clan and the entire Fox clan naturally didn't dare to offend the Tenma people. They originally wanted to persuade the Cyan Fox clan to compromise, but the Cyan Fox clan refused to comply. In addition, the Cyan Fox clan's mother, the clan leader of the Cyan Fox clan, also supported her daughter. In the end, the fourth young master of the Ma family flew into a rage out of humiliation, but he didn't succumb to the Tenma people's coercion and temptation. At this point, although the Cyan Fox clan and even the Fox clan had offended the Tenma people wouldn't go so far as to risk universal condemnation and annihilate the Cyan Fox clan. However, things weren't that simple. The Cyan Fox clan wasn't a demon cultivator of the Fox clan, but a descendant of a woman from the Cyan Fox clan and a human cultivator who had fallen in love. After that, the human cultivator disappeared, and the Cyan Fox clan's mother had no choice but to bring the Cyan Fox clan back to the Western Wilderness. For the past 100 years, the Cyan Fox clan's mother had been concealing the Cyan Fox clan's identity as a mixed blood between humans and demons. However, this time, under the persistent harassment of the fourth young master of the Ma family, the Tenma people discovered that the Cyan Fox clan was a mixed blood. The fourth young master of the Ma family immediately acted as if he had obtained a priceless treasure, and immediately issued an ultimatum to the Cyan Fox clan. However, the Cyan Fox, who didn't realize the severity of the situation, not only refused to yield, but also fought with the fourth young master of the Ma family. Although the Cyan Fox clan was an outstanding cultivator among her peers, she was no match for the heavenly pride of the Pegasus clan. Soon she was captured by Ma Chensi. After that, the Cyan Fox clan's mother appeared out of nowhere and interfered with the Cyan Fox clan's plan. At that time, Ma Chensi had just broken through to the late core forging stage. Although she was powerful, she wasn't a match for the Cyan Fox clan's leader, who had already advanced to the Transcendence stage. On top of that, the Cyan Fox clan's leader was protective of his daughter, causing Ma Chensi to suffer a great loss. However, Ma Chensi relied on a treasure bestowed by the elders of the clan to escape from the Cyan Fox clan's leader with severe injuries. Since young, Ma Chensi had never suffered such a great loss. When the Tenma people's leader, Ma Zhen, saw his most beloved son in such a state, he was naturally furious and wanted to stand up for his son. Originally, things weren't that simple. The Cyan Fox clan's descendant, the entire Fox clan, was a rather powerful clan in the Western Wilderness. There was no reason for the Tenma people to fall out with the entire Fox clan over this matter. However, Ma Chensi brought another piece of news to Ma Zhen. The Cyan Fox clan's leader's daughter was actually a mixed blood. How could this be? The Fox clan was originally a vassal of the White-Fronted Tiger clan, one of the three royal clans of the Western Wilderness. After the Tiger clan's power declined, the Tenma people urgently needed to expand their power. Naturally, they had to suppress the Tiger clan. At this time, the Cyan Fox clan became the best excuse for the Tenma people to expand their clan's power. Chapter 779. A union between a human and a demon was just like the commotion that Yin Shenchu had caused in the North Sea. It was also a taboo topic among the demons. After the Green Fox's identity was exposed, the Pegasus clan did not exert any pressure or question them. Instead, Ma Zhen immediately gathered the elite forces of the Pegasus clan and surrounded the entire Fox clan. A green fox who was a union between a human and a demon was naturally not worthy of the Pegasus clan's efforts. However, when the Fox clan was backed by the Hanging Eyes White-Fronted Tiger clan, the Pegasus clan had a reason to make such a big move. The declining Hanging Eyes White-Fronted Tiger clan chose to retreat in the face of the overbearing Tenma people. After the Fox clan's persuasion failed, the entire Green Fox clan was abandoned by the Fox clan and became the Tenma people's sacrificial lambs. The Tenma people expanded their traditional sphere of influence in one fell swoop. The Fox clan's power was greatly reduced, and the Hanging Eyes White-Fronted Tiger clan's living space was squeezed. The Tenma people leapt to become the most powerful royal clan in the entire Western Wilderness. After Green Fox's mother injured Ma Chensi with her own hands and allowed him to escape, she immediately realized that she had done a foolish thing. Sensing that something was wrong, the Green Fox clan's matriarch hurriedly sent her daughter away to avoid trouble. However, she never expected that the Pegasus clan's revenge would not be on her daughter, but on the entire Green Fox clan. After entering the Western Wilderness, Lu Ping originally wanted to postpone his plan to kill Ma Chensi because of the opening of the river source. After all, the river source was still very attractive to Lu Ping, especially after he discovered the extremely mysterious power that had a strong attraction to his bloodline. However, this time Ma Chensi's attack was obviously to kill Lu Ping. How could Lu Ping let it go so easily? Thus, he decided to set up the natal gentian formation in the middle of the sacred lake. Lu Ping did not believe that Ma Chensi would be able to escape from his hands after he had set up the natal gentian array. Even if he had many treasures given to him by Dharma adepts, it would still be the same. Unless a Dharma adept stepped in to rescue him from the gentian array. However, just as Lu Ping summoned the gentian pearl from his core space, he could not help but slow down because he sensed that the water around him had changed again. This slight change made Lu Ping, who had the water and moon pearl and the map of the sacred lake, instantly sense something. Just at this time, a joyous laughter suddenly came from above Ma Chensi and Li Tong's heads. Ha 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 ha. Xia Tianyang dived down from the water with a treasure that was emitting a purple glow on top of his head. After seeing Ma Chensi and Li Tong, he immediately laughed and said, "I've finally caught up with you guys. Hey, what's wrong with you two? Could it be that there's some danger at the bottom of the sacred lake that I've never heard of?" In the pitch-black part of the sacred lake not far from the three of them, an undercurrent appeared inconspicuous among the many undercurrents at the bottom of the lake. In an instant, it merged with the many undercurrents and headed deeper into the sacred lake. He did not expect that Xie Tianyang would also come at this time. After Lu Ping set up the Genshin array, if there were only Li Tong and Ma Chenxi, Lu Ping was confident that he could kill them. However, if Xie Tianyang were to join forces with the three cultivators whose abilities were not much different from his, Lu Ping was not confident. Lu Ping did not want to expose himself to the opposing side of the Pegasus and Koi Carp clans. Now that Xiang Palace was involved, the situation would be even more serious. This time, Lu Ping's mission was given to him by the Zhenling sect's ancestors. It was to make a name for himself and spread the name of Zhenling sect in the Central Plains. There was no reason for Lu Ping to face such a strong opponent for himself and Zhenling sect. Lu Ping immediately gave up on the idea of killing Ma Chenxi and Li Tong. Instead, he turned into an undercurrent and followed the previous undercurrent towards the deepest part of the sacred lake. That subtle undercurrent just now made Lu Ping's mind suddenly grasp something. Lu Ping wanted to find the spiritual energy gathering ground at a depth of 9,000 feet before the three of them. The map in Lu Ping's hand was obtained from the Koi Carp clan. The Tenma people and the Koi Carp clan had entered and exited the sacred lake several times. Every time they could find and occupy a large number of spiritual energy gathering grounds at the bottom of the lake at a depth of 7, 8, or 9,000 feet. Once Ma Chenxi and the others entered the bottom of the lake at a depth of 9,000 feet, they would definitely be faster than Lu Ping in finding the best 5 spiritual energy gathering grounds. Xie Tianyang was also a clever person. Seeing the two's expressions, Xie Tianyang immediately understood the cause of the matter and asked in a low voice, "Is it because of Lu Xianping from the North Sea?" Ma Chenxi snorted coldly while Li Tong laughed bitterly. Xie Tianyang saw the expressions of the two and immediately turned his head to stare at Ma Chenxi. Ma Chenxi was stared at by Xie Tianyang's mocking gaze until the anger in her heart burst forth. Her face turned red, and just as she was about to lose control of her anger, she heard Xie Tianyang suddenly sigh and say, "Why are you so nervous? Not to mention that there are 3 of us here, even if there were only the 2 of you just now, would it be certain death if you were targeted? That person is at most on par with us." As the saying goes, the onlooker sees the game more clearly. From Xie Tianyang's words, it was obvious that he already knew that the person who wanted to sneak attack was Lu Ping, and he was sure that the one who provoked him first was this bad horse. Although saying it out directly made Ma Chenxi look a little ugly, but looking at the relaxed expressions on Ma Chenxi and Li Tong's faces, it wasn't hard to see that the two were really frightened by Lu Ping just now. However, what they didn't know was that Lu Ping really had the confidence to kill them. Xie Tianyang saying that they were on par was just being presumptuous. Fortunately, Lu Ping left because he discovered the traces of the spiritual energy gathering ground. Otherwise, they might have been able to truly witness Lu Ping's strength. Back then, Jiao Daoren had a horn after his body transformed into a true soul. This was the consensus of the cultivation world. However, what were the horns on Jiao Daoren's back then? Was it a single horn, double horn, or multiple horns? This was something that could not be determined. In Lu Ping's memories there was an image of a flood dragon, but in this world he didn't dare to confirm whether the flood dragon he knew was correct. The reason why the 8 strange flood dragons on the surface of Lu Ping's golden core were called strange, was because the 8 strange flood dragons on the surface of Lu Ping's golden core did not match any of the various legendary flood dragons in the cultivation world. However, Lu Ping wasn't the slightest bit worried, because these 8 flood dragons that were extremely strange in other people's eyes were developing towards the most sacred mythological beast in Lu Ping's heart. And this mythological beast was the one that had never been mentioned in this world. Dragon. Or rather, there were legends. At the very least, the Long Huai that Lu Ping had seen before had the word dragon in his name. It was just that the Long Huai ancestor himself didn't know why his name had the word dragon in it. When Lu Ping followed the faint undercurrent to his destination, Lu Ping suddenly believed that the true soul that Jiao Daoren had achieved back then only had a single horn. This was because there was suddenly an extremely narrow, slender, cone-shaped hole at the bottom of this peculiar sacred lake. The deeper he went, the narrower it became until it formed a pointed cone-shaped hole at the top. Lu Ping thought to himself, could this be because the true soul that Jiao Daoren had transformed back then had been smashed into this shape by his own horn when he fell to the ground? The source of the tiny undercurrent was formed from this hole that was only 3 feet wide at the beginning. Could this be a place where spiritual qi gathered? Lu Ping looked around. He didn't sense any abnormality in the concentration of spiritual qi around him, nor did he discover any protective formation around the place where spiritual qi gathered. Could it be at the bottom of this cone-shaped hole? Lu Ping looked at the slender hole that was about 5 feet deep, and his heart suddenly skipped a beat. However, how could this hole that was only 3 feet wide allow Lu Ping to enter? Although Lu Ping could sometimes use escape techniques and turn his body into flowing water, that was only to make his body look like flowing water. In reality, Lu Ping's body still existed, and he couldn't change shape like flowing water. He could only barely follow the flow. Looking at the hole in front of him, Lu Ping definitely didn't believe that his calculations could be wrong. However, what was going on with this hole in front of him? Even if Lu Ping climbed in, he wouldn't be stuck after climbing 2 feet in. Lu Ping tried to hack at the stone wall of the hole, but the impact made Lu Ping's hands numb. The stone wall at the bottom of the sacred lake looked like it was made of ordinary material, but for some reason, it had become abnormally hard. Even if a cultivator used magic treasures and spells to bombard it, they might not be able to cut off a few pieces. Some cultivators had a sudden idea that such a hard material could be an unknown spiritual material. They spent a lot of effort to chisel out a few pieces of stone from the sacred lake and bring them back to their sections. For this, they missed out on a few good places to gather spiritual chi. However, these few pieces of stone were discarded by the sect's refiners. They thought that they were just ordinary stones that had been compressed by force and could not be used for refining weapons. This cultivator became a laughingstock in the cultivation world for a while. Could it be? Just as Lu Ping was puzzled, a message from the memory of the pure Yang soul appeared in Lu Ping's mind. Lu Ping was shocked. He looked at the hole in front of him in surprise and thought to himself, a double-layered space? Could it be that there is another space in a space like Lake Sacred Settling? Such a double-layered space was usually created by a cultivator in a grotto heaven magic treasure or a spatial land. However, these embedded spaces had many restrictions. One of the most important things was that the entrance to the outer space might be very small, but the entrance to the embedded space would definitely be very large. Just like the central palace grotto heaven in the Yingtian dojo, the entrance to the outer space was just the mouth of a ceramic bottle, but the entrance to the embedded space was a towering palace. If the 3-foot-wide hole in front of him was really the entrance to the embedded space, it could only mean that the cultivation of the person who created the river source was far stronger than the pure yang cultivator of the Yingtian sect, Fei Tian Laozu. Lu Ping suddenly stepped into the 3-foot-wide hole. Before Lu Ping could bend over and completely shrink his body into the hole, a ripple suddenly appeared in the hole and completely swallowed him. Then the ripple gradually subsided, and the surrounding scenery changed completely. There was no longer a slender cone-like hole. Chapter 780. Xie Tianyang had now rushed ahead of Ma Chenxi and Li Tong. Just now, after Xie Tianyang had pointed out the worries in the hearts of the two people, he had taken the first step and arrived at the bottom of the 9,000 feet deep lake. Ma Chenxi and Li Tong looked at each other and immediately followed. However, after a while the two of them lost track of Xie Tianyang. Xie Tianyang's stealth speed in Sacred Lake was definitely not as fast as the two of them. Either Xie Tianyang had used an extremely powerful stealth magic, or Xie Tianyang had found a spiritual energy gathering ground at the bottom of the lake, which was more than 9,000 feet deep. Although there was a power at the bottom of Sacred Lake that could distort a cultivator's spiritual will, Ma Chenxi and Li Tong did not think that Xie Tianyang could shake off their pursuit at such a close distance. Then there was only one possibility left. Xie Tianyang had actually entered a spiritual energy gathering ground, and the protective array of the spiritual energy gathering ground had automatically activated after Xie Tianyang crashed into it, concealing his tracks. There were a total of 5 spiritual energy gathering grounds at the bottom of the lake, which was more than 9,000 feet deep. Even though Pegasus and Koi were frequent visitors to Sacred Lake, it was difficult for them to determine the locations of these 5 spiritual energy gathering grounds. Although Purple Sun Palace was more powerful than the two clans, their sphere of influence did not cover the entire western wilderness, so their familiarity with Sacred Lake was definitely far inferior to the two clans. In that case, there was only one possibility. Xie Tianyang's luck was simply too good. He had actually encountered a spiritual energy gathering ground not far from the bottom of the lake and entered it without knowing it. The ripples on the lake waters behind them grew increasingly violent. Clearly, an increasing number of cultivators had entered Sacred Fall Lake. Additionally, some powerful cultivators were already making their way towards the depths of Sacred Fall Lake. They were getting closer and closer to the two of them. There were still 3 spiritual energy gathering grounds at 9,000 feet deep. If they could not find them before the others arrived, then Pegasus and Koi would probably become the laughingstock of others. Lu Ping turned into a cave that was wide at the top and narrow at the bottom. Suddenly he felt the ground beneath his feet loosen. Lu Ping hurriedly channeled his essential essence to stabilize his body, but unexpectedly the essential essence in his body suddenly did not listen to him and his body sank. Dong. As soon as Lu Ping's feet touched the ground, he quickly squatted down. This time he had fallen to a height of 100 feet. Without the protection of true essence, Lu Ping could only rely on the strength of his body to withstand the impact of falling 100 feet. Even though Lu Ping's physical body was no longer weaker than that of an ordinary Dharma adept, falling from such a high place without any form of defense had caused Lu Ping to experience the panic and shortness of breath that only mortals would experience. However, as Lu Ping was falling, the essential essence within Lu Ping's body stirred and he regained control over his essential essence. Lu Ping's thoughts flowed rapidly, calming down the trembling of his internal organs. Then Lu Ping abruptly stood up and his divine will spread out in all directions. Both his eyes scanned his surroundings. At the same time, a small, somewhat tattered, black flag rose up above his head. A bluish-purple curtain of light descended from the small flag, protecting Lu Ping within it. There was a space that had been opened up from within the stone walls. The space had a radius of around 300 feet and there was only the surrounding stone walls and the ground. Lu Ping raised his head to look at the sky above him, only to see nothing but darkness. There was no end to it. Lu Ping flew up into the sky, leaping up to a height of 10 feet. However, no matter how hard Lu Ping tried, he was unable to increase his flying altitude by even a little bit. The thick spiritual energy around him made Lu Ping feel as comfortable as if he was soaking in a hot spring. It seemed that this was indeed a spiritual energy gathering place. However, he had never heard that the spiritual energy gathering place of Sacred Lake Sunset was an embedded space. Looking at the empty stone mansion around him, he wondered if he would have to spend the next 4 to 5 years in seclusion here. However, even if it was for seclusion, there was no need to open up such a large space. Just as Lu Ping was about to look for a place to sit down and seclude himself here, he wanted to experience just what kind of wondrous things existed within Sacred Lake Sunset. To think that it could actually allow a cultivator to increase his cultivation level by at least 1 level within 4 to 5 years. Suddenly the stone chamber changed once again. According to Lu Ping's divine sense, the thick spiritual energy in his surroundings began to vibrate slowly the moment Lu Ping regained control over the primary energy within his body. In the beginning Lu Ping did not notice it. However, as the vibrations of the spiritual energy grew more intense, Lu Ping began to focus on the fluctuations of the spiritual energy. Then he noticed that the spiritual energy in the entire stone chamber had begun to slowly swirl towards the center of the stone chamber. The surrounding spiritual energy kept converging towards the center of the stone chamber. Gradually, a spiritual energy storm formed in the periphery. Then, a massive spiritual energy vortex formed in the center of the stone chamber. Lu Ping's eyes were focused on the center of the vortex. The spiritual energy there was constantly converging and compressing and a vast amount of power began to condense. The power gave Lu Ping a sense of potential threat. A colorful cloud suddenly rose around Lu Ping. The cloud gradually dispersed and gradually merged with the bluish-purple light curtain hanging down from the water-controlling flag. A series of whistling sounds came from the spiritual energy whirlpool, and the spiritual energy from all directions was still gathering towards the center. It was unknown where the spiritual energy in the stone room came from, but it seemed that there was no interruption at all. Lu Ping's expression gradually became solemn. His divine sense was very sensitive. At this time, he had already sensed that there was a rhythmic beating in the center of the spiritual energy. The beating was becoming more and more condensed and powerful. Lu Ping's expression gradually changed because he could sense that there was a steady and powerful beating in the center of the spiritual energy. Waves of vitality gradually appeared and became more and more abundant. A heart condensed purely from spiritual energy appeared in the center of the spiritual energy. Clang, clang. Feeling the danger, Lu Ping pointed with 2 of his fingers. The autumn water's sword followed the blood vessels in Lu Ping's body and swam out of the heart space. In the end it came out from the tip of his finger. It was like 2 swordfish swimming around Lu Ping's body, ready to launch a counterattack at any time against any possible threat. After the spiritual energy heart formed, a long, distant hiss came from the spiritual energy vortex. It seemed to come from ancient times when the world was first formed. A distant, mysterious pressure came from it, rushing towards Lu Ping. His blood was immediately stirred up an urge to worship, as if he was paying respect to an ancient ancestor. Lu Ping's divine sense resisted this mysterious power that could touch his blood vessels. The 8 strange dragons in the heart space quickly circled around the surface of the golden core, as if they wanted to charge out. Lu Ping's entire aura changed. A mysterious aura rose from Lu Ping's body. The ripples of the blood vessels in his body quickly calmed down, and the mysterious power from the spiritual energy vortex was quickly neutralized. At this moment, the surrounding spiritual energy finally stopped gathering. The huge amount of spiritual energy that had condensed in the center of the stone chamber had formed a spiritual mist that was almost liquefied. Dong. The entire ground shook, as if an ancient beast had traversed through space and time to walk towards Lu Ping. Dong. Another sound was heard. A thick giant claw broke through the spiritual mist and stepped on the ground, causing the entire ground to tremble. However, the strange thing was that the sound from the ground seemed to give Lu Ping a feeling that the ground was hollow. However, at this moment, Lu Ping did not have time to think about the reason. This giant claw gave Lu Ping a very familiar feeling. At this moment, a flat, long and open mouth suddenly emerged from the spiritual mist as the giant claw landed on the ground. Dense, sharp teeth flickered with spiritual energy as they bit towards the top of Lu Ping's head. Primordial giant crocodile. Lu Ping let out a strange cry and quickly flew backwards, avoiding the bite of the giant mouth. At the same time he raised his right hand towards the sky. Landslide whistled down from the sky and smashed into the head of the giant crocodile that was rushing towards Lu Ping. The crocodile's huge head was smashed downwards, and it had no choice but to stop its pursuit of Lu Ping. Lu Ping dodged this attack and landed on the ground in the distance. When he looked at the primordial giant crocodile, he found that the dense spiritual mist was constantly shrinking. The primordial giant crocodile's body and tail were gradually revealed as the spiritual mist disappeared. This was a primordial giant crocodile that was completely condensed from spiritual energy. Looking at this giant beast with a cultivation level of core forging stage in front of him, Lu Ping's expression became very serious. He could feel the huge power contained in this spirit giant crocodile's body. This power made Lu Ping's heart palpitate. A pair of huge bowl-sized eyes suddenly opened, and Lu Ping felt as if the stone room had suddenly become bright. The spirit giant crocodile opened its mouth and let out a strange long hiss, then rushed towards Lu Ping. The ocean-crossing boat under Lu Ping's feet flashed out. Against such a huge monster, Lu Ping could only use fast movement to fight it. The primordial giant crocodile's giant foot fell from the sky, and the entire ground was completely caved in by the primordial giant crocodile's giant foot. However, before Lu Ping could use the dual flying sword, the giant crocodile had already opened its giant mouth and bit towards Lu Ping, who was flying in the air. In desperation, Lu Ping could only use the dual flying sword to stir the giant crocodile's mouth. The giant crocodile suddenly let out a long hiss that sounded like a painful roar. Its giant head and its giant mouth swung, and a huge force came from the dual flying sword. Lu Ping was immediately shaken away. At the same time, a few flashing spirit teeth flew out of the giant crocodile's mouth and then evaporated into a few dense spirit energies that gathered in Lu Ping's body. Lu Ping didn't understand and wanted to dodge, but these spirit energies were like tarsal bones. No matter how Lu Ping used an escape technique, he couldn't get rid of these small spirit energies. While Lu Ping was feeling uneasy, the few spirit energies pierced into Lu Ping's body. Lu Ping felt a stabbing pain in his body. These thin strands of spirit energies immediately entered his blood vessels and turned into surging true essence qi. Unexpectedly, there was no need for Lu Ping to refine it. It integrated with the true essence produced by the North Sea wave listening technique. It followed along the blood vessels and gathered in the core space. Chapter 781. After the spirit qi that pierced into Lu Ping's body merged with Lu Ping's true essence at an extremely fast speed, Lu Ping immediately sensed that after the spirit qi merged, the true essence of the North Sea wave listening technique that Lu Ping cultivated was trying to change. Lu Ping's intuition told him that these changes were not unbeneficial to him, but this change seemed to start from the golden core in the core space, where the essence of Lu Ping's cultivation gathered. However, after this true essence merged into the core space and gradually transformed into a mist that could be absorbed by the golden core, an inexplicable suction suddenly came from the golden core. The 8 strange dragons seemed to have sensed something from the changes in the surrounding mist. They all hovered on the surface of the golden core, as if they wanted to rush out of the golden core. Lu Ping could sense that at this moment, his golden core seemed to have discovered something delicious. With a thought from Lu Ping, the North Sea wave listening technique circulated in Lu Ping's body. A mist that was assimilated by this true essence immediately floated toward the golden core. The 8 strange dragons gathered in the direction of this mist, as if they could not wait to fight for the delicacy in their hands. In desperation, Lu Ping could only turn this small mist into a thin mist, barely enveloping Lu Ping's huge golden core. Only then did the 8 strange dragons divide the mist equally. Although Lu Ping escaped from the giant crocodile's mouth, he was also sent flying. Lu Ping quickly circulated the true essence in his body, trying to stabilize himself and slow down the impact of being sent flying. However, this true essence took the opportunity to converge into the core space. Before Lu Ping could stop it, it had been absorbed by the golden core. Lu Ping hurriedly looked inside, trying to check if there was a problem with his true essence. However, at this time Lu Ping was fighting with the giant crocodile. How could Lu Ping be distracted to do these things? Just as Lu Ping was focusing on checking the true essence in his body, the long tail of the giant crocodile had already intercepted Lu Ping in midair. Lu Ping, who was startled, had no time to recall the dual flying swords that were temporarily out of control after being knocked away by the giant crocodile. He directly used the flowing sword and slashed, but it seemed to have slashed into the void, and then a sudden strong force bounced back. Lu Ping seemed to have been hit by a huge blunt object. The light curtain hanging down from the water-controlling flag was completely flattened like a bubble that was about to be squeezed. Lu Ping hurriedly used the protective magic power, and at the same time, white jade lotus flashed from the light curtain, barely maintaining the protective light curtain of the water-controlling flag. However, although Lu Ping took the blow of the giant crocodile's tail, his whole body was involuntarily smashed back in midair, hitting the stone wall in the cave mansion. Lu Ping suddenly felt a burst of blood in his body, and he couldn't help but cough a few times. Not far away, the giant crocodile also let out a painful hiss. After all, the flowing sword was a spirit-nourishing flying sword. Although the true essence sword technique was not a great magic sword technique, with the support of Lu Ping's strong true essence, it had the power of a great magic sword technique. The long tail of the giant crocodile was hit by the flowing sword. Although the flowing sword was knocked away, the long tail of the giant crocodile was also cut in half. Lu Ping cast out the beautiful autumn dew sword and the twin swords flew out one after another, casting a great skill, spinning chain slash. One after another, the twin swords slashed at the giant tail that was cut open by the long stream sword. Crack, a crisp sound rang out, and the long tail of the giant crocodile was cut off. Before the long tail fell to the ground, it turned into traces of rich and strange spirit chi, directly injected into Lu Ping's body. Lu Ping didn't even have a way to dodge. When the spirit chi was injected into Lu Ping's blood, it almost didn't need Lu Ping to refine it, directly turned into pure true essence, converging into Lu Ping's core space and then turned into red clouds. Without waiting for it to affect more of the true essence, it was absorbed by the 8 strange dragons on the surface of the golden core. Lu Ping could clearly feel that every time the strange dragons on the surface of the golden core swallowed and spat out a strange true essence, Lu Ping's cultivation was extremely obvious. Although this increase was not significant, Lu Ping could clearly feel it. The giant crocodile that had lost an extremely tyrannical attack method after its giant tail was broken, so it became more and more irritable. The giant crocodile's flat mouth suddenly lifted up and then suddenly paused. The giant mouth suddenly opened and a pure spirit chi spewed out from the giant mouth, then turned into rolling waves that swept towards Lu Ping. Great magic technique. This giant crocodile actually knew great magic techniques. Lu Ping's hands made a few gestures in succession. The water manipulation technique was activated, and the rolling spiritual power was injected into the waves of spirit chi, beginning to compete with the giant crocodile for control of the waves. Although Lu Ping's water manipulation technique claimed to be able to control all water in the world, this wave of spiritual power was, after all, the magical power of the giant crocodile. Although Lu Ping could obstruct and weaken this wave, he couldn't completely annihilate it. Lu Ping had no choice but to increase the injection of his own true essence, intending to try to control this pure wave of spiritual power again. However, a strange power suddenly surged in the wave and began to corrode Lu Ping's true essence. However, Lu Ping's true essence was condensed and strong, especially after condensing the profound essence heavy water and the 10,000 wonder dew. The true essence in Lu Ping's body could be said to be condensed to the extreme. The corrosive power in the wave of spiritual power was almost negligible to Lu Ping's true essence. However, the magical power of the giant crocodile reminded Lu Ping that if there was a method that could corrode true essence and weaken the strength of cultivators, which one could compare to the 10,000 poison serum? The protective aura on the surface of Lu Ping's body began to retract layer by layer, and finally, only the last layer of pale golden 10,000 poison meteorite energy gang was left. As the true essence was injected into the 10,000 poison meteorite energy gang, the protective aura shone brightly, and then it also turned into a golden wave that rushed towards the wave of spiritual power. With a pu sound, the two waves suddenly collided, and a burst of chi-chi sounds rang out. The 10,000 poison meteorite energy gang quickly gained the upper hand and began to corrode, assimilate, and absorb the spiritual power wave. The true essence in Lu Ping's body rapidly grew, and the 8 strange dragons on the surface of the golden core became more and more active. Lu Ping could clearly feel that the golden core in the core space was slowly growing, and his cultivation was constantly gaining the upper hand, advancing towards the peak of the 8th layer of core forging. On the contrary, the giant crocodile on the opposite side continued to fight. Due to the loss of its sawteeth, tail, and spiritual power wave, the giant crocodile's body continued to weaken, gradually becoming more and more transparent. Seeing this, Lu Ping hurriedly flicked a few drops of 10,000 poison serum into the body of the giant crocodile during the battle. The giant crocodile's methods were constantly broken by Lu Ping, and it seemed to feel that something was wrong. Its whole body suddenly changed and a layer of blue light wrapped around its 4 feet. The blue light continued to transform and gradually formed a small stream. Under the accompaniment of the stream, the giant crocodile's previously bloated and clumsy body suddenly became agile and fast. As the stream meandered, Lu Ping's previous advantage of agility suddenly disappeared. However, Lu Ping's methods were naturally not limited to these. Just as the giant crocodile began to close in on Lu Ping, the landslide fell once again. This time the giant crocodile was prepared. Its body that was originally rushing towards Lu Ping suddenly stopped, and the landslide suddenly smashed in front of the giant crocodile's head. However, although the giant crocodile seemed to be quite intelligent, it was not a living creature after all. It could not compare to the intelligence of a cultivator. Just as the giant crocodile avoided the heavy pressure of the landslide, a dark cloud had already gathered in the deep space above the cave. A bolt of lightning struck the giant crocodile's body before the thunder had even descended. This time the giant crocodile had no way to dodge. The 7-colored lightning exploded on its huge body, leaving a 1-foot wide hole. The giant crocodile's body became more and more transparent. Lu Ping's eyes narrowed. Amidst the flickering green light, he discovered that in the giant crocodile's chest, a heart condensed from pure spirit chi was beating vigorously. With a thought, Lu Ping's dual flying swords turned into the seeping sword art. Countless raindrop-like sword chi surrounded the giant crocodile from all directions and began to cut its body. Wisps of strange spirit chi, after being separated from the giant crocodile's body, automatically gathered in Lu Ping's blood vessels and transformed into pure and thick true essence. Then it turned into Dan Qi in his core space, and after being swallowed and refined by the strange flood dragon, it turned into wisps of true essence and gathered in his gold core. The spiritual energy giant crocodile was too busy to deal with the sword chi attacks from all directions. It was only roaring as if it were venting the fury in its heart. However, it did not notice that a barely perceptible blue light was flashing among the dense sword chi. Under Lu Ping's control, the nether water sword was already hovering above the giant crocodile's back without it noticing. Lu Ping's hand seals dispersed and he suddenly shouted in his heart, "Fall!" The nether water sword abruptly pierced through the hole that had just been blasted open by the 7 treasures thunder gourd, and in one fell swoop, it pierced through the heart formed by pure spiritual chi in the giant crocodile's body. After the nether water sword pierced through the heart, the giant crocodile's body suddenly trembled. Lu Ping actually saw a trace of fear in the giant crocodile's eyes, which were condensed from spirit chi. However, before Lu Ping could think too much, the giant crocodile's body began to disintegrate, turning into wisps of strange true essence that gathered in Lu Ping's body. A moment later, the giant crocodile disappeared, and the spirit chi in the cave mansion also disappeared. Although Lu Ping could feel his body brimming with true essence, there was still a long way to go before he could advance to the peak of the 8th layer of core forging. Could it be that this was how the spirit chi gathering place was like? Relying on spirit chi transformed from spirit chi to fight against cultivators, absorbing the strange spirit chi into one's body and improving the cultivator's cultivation? However, this method was far from enough to satisfy Lu Ping's needs to advance to the 9th layer of core forging. Could it be that Lu Ping's true essence far surpassed others, and the strange true essence transformed from the giant crocodile was unable to satisfy Lu Ping's needs to advance? At this moment, Lu Ping suddenly discovered that the nether water sword was still suspended in midair in the center of the cave mansion. At the tip of the nether water sword, there was a spirit chi heart that had been pierced. It had not disintegrated along with the giant crocodile's body, but was still hanging on the sword. Lu Ping stretched out his hand to summon the nether water sword, and carefully examined the spirit chi heart on the tip of the sword. Only then did he discover that the spirit chi heart had almost condensed into a solid form. Chapter 782. The heart formed from spiritual energy slowly fell onto Lu Ping's hand. The moment the heart made contact with Lu Ping's hand, a pure and abundant spiritual energy far stronger than before flowed through his hand and into his blood vessels. Lu Ping only needed to refine it slightly before it transformed into pure primary energy and flowed into his core space. Lu Ping was shocked. This was the spiritual energy that he had subconsciously absorbed earlier. The primary energy transformed from the spiritual energy was like a raging wave that roared through Lu Ping's blood vessels. When it rushed into his core space, Lu Ping's entire body was shaken. If it weren't for the 8 WRMs opening their mouths to absorb the primary energy, Lu Ping's body might have exploded the moment he came into contact with the spiritual energy heart. Even so, Lu Ping immediately realized that this spiritual energy heart was definitely a rare treasure. If he could resolve the violent spiritual energy contained within it and slowly absorb it into his body, the boost to his cultivation would be no less than that of a large spirit vein. Once he thought of this, he immediately took action. After confirming that there were no other dangers in his surroundings and that he still couldn't find an exit, Lu Ping simply sat cross-legged in the center of the cave mansion and began refining the spiritual energy heart. Holding the spiritual energy heart in his hands, a purplish-blue light emerged from Lu Ping's hands. The light gradually spread to the spiritual energy heart before enveloping the entire heart. The reason why he used his own primary energy to envelop the spiritual energy heart was because Lu Ping found that the condensed heart was slowly evaporating. Spiritual energy was constantly escaping from it. If he did not use his primary energy to envelop it, the spiritual energy would inevitably be wasted. After Lu Ping's primary energy completely enveloped the entire spiritual energy heart, Lu Ping's face immediately turned red. Then, it became a purplish-blue color as if there was a deep sea rippling on his face. Lu Ping operated the North Sea wave listening technique to its limits. Even though Lu Ping could not be more careful and was only attempting to absorb a small portion of the spiritual energy from the spiritual energy heart, even this small portion of energy was enough for Lu Ping to display all of his abilities in order to transform the spiritual energy into his own. This was only possible because Lu Ping had refined the profound heavy water and myriad wonder jade nectar. If it was anyone else, in order to prevent the spiritual energy contained within the spiritual energy heart from exploding, they would have to place the spiritual energy heart beside their body to absorb the spiritual energy from afar. Although this could weaken the impact of the spiritual energy contained within the heart, it would also cause a large amount of spiritual energy to dissipate and cause losses in the process of absorbing spiritual energy from afar because there was no primary energy to cover it. This spiritual energy heart was only 1 foot in size, but the spiritual energy condensed within it had reached an astonishing density. Lu Ping's full strength in refining the primary energy in his body could create an extremely shocking scene of spiritual energy being absorbed and spat out. However, this scene was insignificant for this spiritual energy heart. After an unknown amount of time, Lu Ping stopped operating the North Sea wave listening technique. When he looked down, he found that the spiritual energy heart in his hands had only shrunk a little. The remaining heart was even more condensed, and the spiritual energy contained within it had already condensed into a solid form. Lu Ping smiled bitterly. He had no choice but to calm down and continue refining. He would treat this as a closed-door training session. However, Lu Ping could not help but wonder if this was the true secret of the place where spiritual energy gathered in the sacred lake. It was through the specially condensed spiritual energy that cultivators could refine and absorb to achieve the purpose of improving their cultivation. This was because Lu Ping could clearly feel that during the process of refining the spiritual energy heart, Lu Ping's cultivation was rapidly rising towards the door of the 9th stage of the core forging realm. The smaller the spiritual energy heart became, the more difficult it was to refine. When the entire heart became the size of a pill, Lu Ping's originally calm expression suddenly changed. After a while it became a little strange, but there was a trace of joy mixed in with the strangeness. At the core of this heart, there was a dark blue object constantly flowing. Lu Ping's bluish-purple primary energy continued to permeate this core pill. After an unknown amount of time, Lu Ping's face lit up. When he looked at the pill in his hand again, the dark blue object inside had disappeared. In the core space of Lu Ping's heart, there was a dense cloud of red light surrounding the golden elixir. As the North Sea wave listening technique that Lu Ping practiced was an extremely mysterious technique, this technique took into account the purity and richness of the primary energy. Therefore, every time the primary energy essence that was refined in the bloodline flowed into the core space, it would first gather around the golden elixir to form a dense cloud of red light. Then, the cloud of red light would be continuously refined by the strange dragon on the surface of the golden elixir into the purer and more condensed primary energy essence. This would then be absorbed by the golden elixir and used to strengthen Lu Ping's foundation and as the foundation for improving his cultivation. And at this moment, in this purple cloud of red light, there was a dark blue object rolling in the cloud of red light. This object was the one that had been in the core of the spiritual energy heart. It was rumored that before Dharma adepts condensed their own special ability seed, they would first condense in the core space a rune that was condensed from this special ability. This rune was also known as a rune. In short, it was an extremely mysterious pattern. And when a practitioner advanced to the Dharma stage, as the Dharma power was born from the golden elixir, there would be a chance that this rune would be captured and refined by the newborn Dharma power when it needed to absorb large amounts of spiritual energy. From there, the rune would condense into a special ability seed in the Dharma power and become a special ability. Of course, although it was extremely difficult to condense this type of special ability rune in the core space, but even if it was successfully condensed, when the practitioner advanced to the Dharma power stage, it was rare for it to be captured and refined by the Dharma power. Most of the runes would disintegrate when the Dharma power was formed, turning into pure primary energy to nourish the newly formed Dharma power. Therefore, there were often some cultivators at the peak of the core forging stage who, before advancing to the transcendent stage, would condense several great divine power runes in the space of their heart. Then, when they finally advanced to the transcendent stage, it was a joyous matter to be able to coincidentally form a great divine power of their own. However, core forging stage practitioners usually only had the opportunity to condense this type of rune in the cloud of red light after they advanced to the peak of the core forging stage and smelted the third type of spiritual energy. It was almost unheard of in the world of practice that anyone could condense a rune in the cloud of red light before achieving a high-grade golden elixir. However, after Lu Ping absorbed the dark blue object in the spiritual energy heart, a dark blue rune actually formed in the cloud of red light in the core space. Lu Ping could feel that this dark blue rune was different from the dark blue object in the spiritual energy heart. However, the formation of this rune was closely related to the dark blue object in the spiritual energy heart. What made Lu Ping even more surprised was that the rune was not condensed by one of the great magical spells that Lu Ping had already mastered, but water manipulation technique. Although the water manipulation technique was one of the 12 secret spells that Lu Ping cultivated in the North Sea wave listening technique, the water manipulation technique in Lu Ping's hands was no less powerful than a great magical spell. However, the water manipulation technique itself was not a great magical spell. It was a type of spell that changed according to the depth of the cultivator's cultivation. It should be considered the most basic spell of the North Sea 12 orthodox techniques and could be considered a kind of foundation for water element spells. However, right now in the cloud of red light in Lu Ping's core space, a water manipulation technique had condensed and completely upgraded the water manipulation technique to a great magical spell. This was something that Lu Ping did not expect. After thinking about it, Lu Ping had once used the water manipulation technique when he was resisting the spirit chi giant alligator's great magical spell. By competing with the giant alligator for control of the spiritual energy waves, the power of the giant alligator's spell was weakened. Could it be because of this that the water manipulation technique's rune condensed in the cloud of red light in the core space, causing the water manipulation technique to upgrade to a great magical spell? Although these were all Lu Ping's guesses, there was one thing that Lu Ping did not doubt. The condensation of the Danxia rune was definitely related to the blue object in the core of the spirit chi giant alligator's heart. When Lu Ping finished refining the last trace of concentrated spiritual energy, there was no trace of the spirit chi heart in his hand. Lu Ping jumped up from the ground, and his whole body emitted a huge aura fluctuation. After a short moment, these fluctuations were completely restrained, and from the outside he looked like an ordinary youth. Feeling the vigorous true essence circulating in his body, Lu Ping secretly sighed in pity. He was only one step away, and Lu Ping's cultivation was still stuck at the peak of the 8th layer of core forging. In the end he was unable to cross the hurdle of the 9th layer of core forging. He had encountered a bottleneck. If the spirit chi heart was just a little bigger, then perhaps he could have broken through the bottleneck of the 9th layer of core forging. Lu Ping's face was full of regret. The bottleneck of the 9th layer of core forging wasn't so easy to break through. If he missed this opportunity, then it might be another 8 to 10 years later. However, when Lu Ping thought about how refining the spirit chi heart had saved him at least 10 years of cultivation, he couldn't help but sigh at his own greed. Counting with his fingers, Lu Ping unexpectedly spent nearly a year refining the spirit chi heart. This caused Lu Ping to be greatly surprised. Although refining the spirit chi heart was difficult, in Lu Ping's opinion, it was only a matter of a few days. How did a year unknowingly pass by? Looking up at the vast and boundless pitch-black sky, Lu Ping didn't know what to do for a while. Could it be that he would have to continue his seclusion until the river source closed? Lu Ping looked around the cave mansion. Originally, the cave mansion was filled with rich spiritual energy, but now there was no trace of spiritual energy. The spiritual energy that had previously gathered to form the giant crocodile had also disappeared without a trace. Just as Lu Ping was anxiously pacing around, a muffled sound suddenly came from the cave mansion. Lu Ping was startled, and when he turned to look, he saw that in the center of the cave mansion, a cave entrance had unknowingly appeared on the ground. When Lu Ping looked from the side, he saw a spiral stone staircase leading downwards. From afar he could still see a stone mansion below. A wave of spiritual energy rushed out from the cave entrance and rushed towards Lu Ping. Lu Ping took a deep breath. The spiritual energy below was actually even more vigorous than when he first entered the cave mansion a year ago. Chapter 783. Without hesitation, Lu Ping walked down the stone steps at the entrance of the cave. Just as Lu Ping entered the cave entrance behind him disappeared. When Lu Ping turned around, he saw that the stone steps under his feet were continuously disappearing as Lu Ping walked down. At this moment, the dense spirit chi in the cave began to gather toward the center again. When Lu Ping looked down from the high stone steps, a dense spirit mist had already formed. He just didn't know what kind of spirit beast would form this time and how its strength would compare to the spirit chi giant alligator from before. When Lu Ping came down from the stone steps to the ground of the cave mansion, he realized that the cave mansion he was in was one size smaller than the previous one. A resounding hiss came from the spirit mist. Lu Ping's expression became serious, and at the same time, there was a trace of surprise and curiosity. Before the spirit beast could come out of the spirit mist, a flying spike had already pierced through the spirit mist and shot toward Lu Ping's face. As expected of the Tenma people, Lu Ping looked at this divine ability spell that was formed from the horn of the Tenma people. He just didn't know if he used his own divine ability to block this attack. When the time came, would there also be a rune pattern condensed in the Danxia? With a thought, Lu Ping's fated person in autumn sword flew out in rapid succession, and the flying spiral chain slashed at the flying spike. The flying spike was split into a ball of dense spirit chi, and it went straight into Lu Ping's heart. A painful hiss came out and there was the sound of 4 feet stomping on the ground. A ball of spirit mist kept tumbling, as if it was going to rush out of the spirit mist. Then the spirit fog suddenly exploded, and a 2-meter-tall, 3-meter-long giant horse rushed out of the spirit fog. The scattered spirit objects behind the giant horse constantly shrank, finally forming a 3-meter-long ponytail. The giant horse roared and looked at Lu Ping with resentment. The horn on its head became illusory. It was obvious that Lu Ping's attack had injured it quite badly, so when it saw Lu Ping, it was abnormally angry. It could still be angry? There was no time for Lu Ping to think. The giant horse had already roared toward Lu Ping. The crisp sound of the horse's hooves on the stone floor made a jiji sound, as if each sound was trampling on Lu Ping's heart. As the giant horse ran closer, the sound of the horse's hooves became more and more intense and loud. The strange dragon and Lu Ping's heart space roared together. Although there was no sound, Lu Ping's divine sense suddenly felt like it was poured by a clear spring. Lu Ping suddenly woke up, and only then did he realize that his body was already covered in cold sweat, and his heart was beating so fast that it was about to explode. Lu Ping was shocked. He quickly used the wave listening technique, and a strong Zhen Yuan flowed in his blood, firmly protecting the heart space. At the same time, the danxia that was revolving around Lu Ping completely evaporated, and then formed a thin protective layer around his heart, blocking the rhythmic sound of the horse's hooves. Lu Ping's feet flashed and he dodged the heaven horse's charge. However, before he could turn around, the spirit chi heaven horse used some unknown method to make its huge body turn around, and quickly rushed behind Lu Ping. So fast? Lu Ping waved his hand, and a thunderbolt fell from the sky behind him. At the same time, a small boat appeared beneath his feet, and Lu Ping's figure immediately disappeared from the heaven horse's eyes. When he reappeared, he was already at the side of the stone wall that was nearly 100 meters away from the heaven horse. However, at this time, facing the aggressive approach of the spirit chi heavenly horse, Lu Ping, who did not know what was going to happen next, did not want to fight with all his might, so he could only use a method to conserve his strength, intending to use up the spirit chi heavenly horse's spirit energy. This was because Lu Ping had already noticed that every time the heaven horse ran in the cave, there would always be a trace of spirit energy that would dissipate and be absorbed by Lu Ping. Perhaps it was due to the absolute confidence of the cultivator who once created the mysterious North Sea wave listening technique. Among the 12 techniques of the North Sea left behind by this technique, regardless of whether it was offense, defense, entanglement, group combat, protracted battle, sneak attack, or other techniques, all of them were present. Moreover, when each technique was cultivated to an extremely high level, it would have great power. However, it was only in the path of evasion techniques that there wasn't much of an achievement. Perhaps from the creator's point of view, as long as a cultivator cultivated this technique, there was no need for him to use an escape technique at all. Although the art of deceiving the heavens and crossing the sea was of great help to a cultivator's escape, in Lu Ping's opinion, the purpose of cultivating this technique was to catch him off guard during a sneak attack, as well as to defend and counterattack when he was suddenly attacked. The creator had never thought of escaping. This was also the only aspect in which Lu Ping's escape technique wasn't outstanding when compared to cultivators of the same level as him before he obtained the ocean-crossing boat. After Lu Ping dodged a few times, the Pegasus finally caught up to him. Lu Ping had no choice but to fight the Pegasus face to face. He knew that he had used the water manipulation technique in the danxia to secretly set up a tripping rope to entangle the 4 legs of the Pegasus during the battle in the cave mansion. Finally, Lu Ping had waited for an opportunity. With a single strike of the landslide, the Pegasus violently struggled and fainted. Then, with a slash of the long stream sword, Lu Ping chopped off one of the Pegasus' legs. Immediately after, the fated person in autumn waters transformed into the seeping water sword, and broke through the Pegasus' defense. The spiritual energy of the Pegasus was sliced into pieces, turning into drops of spiritual energy that formed a vertical whirlpool above Lu Ping's head. Hopefully, this heart would allow him to step into the 9th level of the core forging realm. After the Pegasus was defeated, it still left behind a huge heart. It was different from the huge heart of the spirit chi giant alligator. This Pegasus's heart was much smaller and from the outside, it looked a lot clearer. Lu Ping could even see a blurry green object in the center of the heart. Lu Ping was secretly delighted. He wondered what kind of incantation patterns would form in the red glow after he refined the heart. Although forming the incantation patterns in his heart core didn't mean that he would be able to form the incantation seeds when he advanced to the Avatar realm, it was still impossible for him to form the incantation seeds when he advanced to the Avatar realm. But without the incantation patterns in his heart core, he would never be able to form the incantation seeds when he advanced to the Avatar realm. What's more, condensing a divine power rune in the core space was a huge boost to Lu Ping's strength. Otherwise, the art of water manipulation wouldn't have been able to completely restrain the Pegasus, which was at the peak of the core forging realm. In a flash, another year passed by. After Lu Ping finished refining the Pegasus's heart, Lu Ping's face was filled with regret. In the end, he still wasn't able to break through to the 9th level of the core forging realm. It wasn't because the heaven and earth spiritual energy condensed by the spirit chi Pegasus was insufficient, but just as Lu Ping was about to break through the bottleneck, something else happened. Lu Ping drew a circle in front of him, and 12 gentian beads floated in front of Lu Ping. Of the 12 beads, 8 had already condensed their 7th restriction and became spirit-nurturing treasures. Previously, Lu Ping had successfully upgraded 2 of the essence chin beads into spirit-nurturing mystic treasures. This time, just as Lu Ping was one step away from advancing to the 9th layer core forging realm, 6 of the 12 essence chin beads that were revolving around the golden core suddenly began to compete with the 8 strange flood dragons in the golden core for the essence of the red mist. Lu Ping's eyes lit up. This wasn't the first time that Lu Ping had encountered such a situation. The sudden eruption of the gentian beads had saved Lu Ping several times. This was especially true when celestial phenomenon Laozu passed his second transcendence tribulation, and when Lu Ping accepted the pure yang soul of the pure yang cultivator Fei Tian Laozu, in the central palace of the Yingtian dojo. It was only because of the gentian beads and the strange dragons that his body didn't explode. Lu Ping didn't stop this from happening. Instead, when the gentian beads seemed to be able to advance by absorbing the essence of the Danxia, Lu Ping began to help them with all his might. Lu Ping did this for a reason. In fact, all natal treasures had a characteristic of giving feedback to their masters. The gentian beads were the same. Every time the gentian beads advanced with Lu Ping's help, they would refine and sublimate their own essence. So when the gentian beads advanced successfully, a part of their essence would often be fed back to Lu Ping's golden core. And this part of the essence fed back could often be directly absorbed by Lu Ping's golden core to improve his own cultivation. But more importantly, it was to consolidate his own foundation. Lu Ping had always had a worry. Although Lu Ping's current cultivation base was strong and his foundation was solid, Lu Ping was still too young compared to cultivators of the same level. His cultivation time was too short. It took him more than 100 years to complete the accumulation of ordinary cultivators of 300 years or even 500 years. Although his cultivation seemed solid, it lacked the accumulation of the vicissitudes of time. Compared with those cultivators who spent hundreds of years to accumulate and polish their true essence, his true essence was pure and thick, but it was a bit more raw and less mellow. It was precisely because of this that Lu Ping gave up the breakthrough at the last moment and relied on improving his cultivation base. Instead, he let the gentian beads absorb the essence of the spiritual qi. At the same time, according to the records in the North Sea wave listening spell, he began to use his divine sense to engrave a treasure on the gentian beads to improve the quality of the natal treasure. And after the essence of the true essence was filtered by the gentian beads and fed back to the golden core, one of the characteristics contained in the true essence was obviously increased, and that was the characteristic of a trace of pure yang qi. Lu Ping had captured a trace of pure yang qi when Laozu was undergoing his tribulation and refined it in a narrow escape. However, most of the essence was obtained by the gentian beads, the white jade lotus and the seven thunder treasures calabash, and the golden core only absorbed a small part. It was not because Lu Ping wanted to do so, but because the pure yang qi was not something that Lu Ping could control. If it was not for the help of the natal gentian formation and the seven thunder treasures calabash, Lu Ping would have been burned to ashes by the pure yang qi. Later, although Lu Ping's true essence also carried the characteristics of pure yang qi because of the pure yang qi absorbed by the golden core, this characteristic seemed to be very small. If it was not for the help of the natal gentian formation, Lu Ping would not have been able to survive the inheritance of the pure yang soul from Laozu. Now that the pure yang qi in the gentian beads flowed back, although Lu Ping's cultivation base did not make a breakthrough, the quality of the true essence had been greatly improved because of the increase of the pure yang qi. The most obvious improvement was that when the same magical power was cast by Lu Ping, the power was 30%, 50%, or even 100% stronger than that of cultivators of the same level. Chapter 784. Although Lu Ping wasn't able to use the spirit qi Pegasus's heart to increase his cultivation to the 9th core forging stage, the benefits he received were no less than an increase in his cultivation. Probing his body with his divine sense, Lu Ming noticed that the originally dense purple Dan Yun had become a lot thinner. Therefore, the two runes that were condensed from the spirit qi Pegasus's heart had become much clearer. One of the runes was naturally condensed from the spirit qi giant crocodile's water manipulation art. The other rune, which was somewhat illusory, was refined from the spirit qi Pegasus heart. Originally, Lu Ping thought that he might be able to obtain a rune that was related to a powerful sword technique. However, to Lu Ping's disappointment, the rune that was condensed from this rune was actually the art of sea deception. Lu Ping remembered that in Jinling's land of inheritance, Lu Ping had obtained a small escape technique. He had fused it with the art of sea deception, allowing Lu Ping's flying escape technique to improve by a lot. However, as Lu Ping's cultivation continued to increase, the art of sea deception became more and more refined under Lu Ping's hands. However, the flying escape technique had once again become outdated. Although Lu Ping had the ocean crossing boat as a means of transportation, which temporarily alleviated the problem of flying, Lu Ping had always wanted to find an escape art that was suitable for him. Now in Lu Ping's Dan Yun, the rune for the art of sea deception had already been condensed. After fusing with the green essence from the spirit chi Pegasus heart, Lu Ping's escape technique had finally improved. Although it wasn't as good as a good escape technique, it at least had the appearance of a powerful escape technique. Just as Lu Ping was wondering if there was a third cave mansion that led underground, the ground immediately trembled. Lu Ping hurriedly dodged to the side and a cave entrance appeared in front of Lu Ping. Following the spiral staircase, Lu Ping felt the density of the spiritual energy increase again. He also noticed that this cave mansion was also a circle smaller than the previous one. The 3 stone mansions were arranged vertically and each was smaller than the previous one. If one looked at them as a whole, they would look like an inverted stone tower with a wide top and a narrow bottom. It was also a mist that was condensed from dense spiritual energy. However, it was unknown what kind of monster it was this time. Based on the 2 giant beasts that appeared last time, whether it was the primordial giant crocodile or the spirit chi Pegasus, they were the direct descendants left behind by Jiao Daoren. They were the top races among the monster race. This time would not be an exception. However, it was said that Jiao Daoren was extremely dissolute in the past. He had a group of concubines and left behind the most bloodline races among the 7th patriarch. At that time, the number 1 expert in the cultivation world was naturally Peng Daoren. However, there was no doubt that Jiao Daoren could become the most powerful person in the cultivation world. However, if the bloodline descendants could be integrated, it would be a force that even the other 6 7th patriarch were very afraid of. At that time, although Jiao Daoren was powerful, he was not unwilling to take power. He traveled around the world all day long or had fun with his concubines and indulged in the land of tenderness. Therefore, the bloodline descendants of Jiao Daoren were scattered all over the cultivation world. They were always like a plate of loose sand. Some races of Jiao Daoren's descendants would even plot against and kill each other, just like the relationship between the Tenma people and the Koi clan, the Green Sea Snake and the Primordial Giant Crocodile, and the relationship between the Primordial Giant Crocodile and the Ice Dragon clan. As Lu Ping walked down the stone steps around the wall of the stone mansion, he was thinking about which top-ranked monster with the bloodline of Flood Dragon would appear this time. At the moment when he was thinking, a black shadow suddenly swung toward Lu Ping's head. After the black shadow passed by, there was a sharp whistling sound in the space. With a blue light flashing in his eyes, Lu Ping jumped directly from the stone steps to the ground. At the same time he saw what was attacking him. It was a slender black tail. It was actually the Green Sea Snake. Lu Ping looked at the black giant snake that wriggled out of the rich spiritual objects with a solemn face. He quickly retreated, and the dual flying swords, the flowing sword, the landslide, and the 7 treasures thunder calabash rose around him. At the same time, the netherwater sword also disappeared in front of Lu Ping in a flash. No one knew where it was lurking, ready to attack the moment the spiritual chi giant snake relaxed. No one knew how many bloodlines Jiao Daoren had left behind, but one thing had never been denied. That was, the Green Sea Snakes had always claimed to be the only race among Jiao Daoren's direct descendants who had inherited Jiao Daoren's mantle. Jiao Daoren's true spirit had once gathered the 6 major attributes: wood, water, fire, earth, wind, and ice. In addition to the metal attribute, Jiao Daoren was only one step away from gathering all 7 attributes. It was precisely because of this step that Jiao Daoren could only be ranked second after Peng Daoren among the 7th patriarch of Sky Splitter. The reason why the Green Sea Snakes dared to claim that they had inherited Jiao Daoren's mantle was because the Green Sea Snakes could derive the 6 attributes of Jiao Daoren's bloodline. The Primordial Giant Crocodile clan, which had challenged the Green Sea Snakes and tried to seize the position of Green Sea Snakes, but failed and fled to the North Sea, could only derive 5 attributes. They lacked the wood attribute. The Pegasus clan ranked 3rd. Their bloodline had never had the 3 attributes of metal, wood, and ice, while the Koi clan mostly had the 2 attributes of water and ice. In addition, there were other races with the bloodline of the Flood Dragon, but the attributes of their bloodline were narrower. Most of them only had 1 or 2 attributes, which limited the expansion of the scale of these races to a certain extent. The Green Sea Snake in front of him actually had another name, the Black Water Mystical Snake. It was a variant of the Green Sea Snakes with the water attribute. At the same time, it was also a relatively tyrannical existence among the Green Sea Snakes. In the past, Lu Hai also had the opportunity to become a black water mystic water serpent, but from the moment he was born, he had been nurtured by Lu Ping's true essence along with Lu Bai and Lu Linger. Although they were still Emerald Sea Spirit serpents, the true essence in their bodies was inherited from Lu Ping, and this inheritance was especially obvious in Lu Hai, who had a water attribute. Therefore, when Lu Hai was in the blood condensation realm and was preparing to advance to the core forging realm, his bloodline did not mutate in the direction of the black water mystical snake. Instead, it became the current situation. Fortunately, the mysterious snake in front of him was still at the 9th level of the core forging realm. However, Lu Ping could sense that the strength of this mysterious snake was far higher than the Spirit Chi giant crocodile and Spirit Chi Pegasus he had encountered before. For Lu Ping, this mysterious snake was undoubtedly more difficult to deal with. However, it was just a little more difficult to deal with. What Lu Ping had to do was to be cautious. A lion should use all its strength to catch a rabbit, to prevent an unexpected failure. The mysterious snake used even more powerful magic arts, even turning its tail into a long and tough whip. It lashed out vertically and coiled around Lu Ping. Coupled with a variety of water attribute magic arts, Lu Ping had to use the long stream sword art to finally break through the mysterious snake's water attribute magic arts. He then used the water manipulation art to lock onto the mysterious snake's weak point, and used the art of sea deception and the shapeless sword art to evade the mysterious snake's random attacks. He stabbed the nether water sword into the mysterious snake's heart, and then used the dual flying swords to perform a chain kill to cut off the snake's head. Only then did the mysterious snake completely disintegrate into spiritual energy. After absorbing all the disintegrated spiritual energy, Lu Ping could feel that the inner yuan in his body was so full that he almost burped. However, at this time Lu Ping was not in a hurry. Lu Ping couldn't help but feel a little surprised when he didn't see any spiritual energy hearts around him. When he turned around, he saw a snake gallbladder bigger than 2 fists on the ground. It was also formed by the strange spiritual energy here. I wonder if I'll be able to leave this strange place after refining this spiritual energy snake gallbladder. After this thought flashed through Lu Ping's mind, he began to focus on refining this spiritual energy snake gallbladder. A year later, Lu Ping was too lazy to use the dust avoidance art. He stood up from the ground, bent down, and patted the dust off his clothes. This time, Lu Ping actually had a chance to break through to the 9th level of the core forging stage. However, in the end, Lu Ping gave up on it. Although there was a chance, it wasn't 100% guaranteed. Lu Ping was also too lazy to try. He was more concerned about the flow of water when the conditions were right, so he didn't deliberately try to break through to the next level. 12 gentian pearls with 7 layers of enchantments floated around Lu Ping. Although the white jade lotus had only 6 layers of enchantments, it could still be used to set up the natal gentian formation. Furthermore, after the gentian pearls became spiritual energy cultivating treasures, the power of Lu Ping's natal gentian formation would become even stronger. How many Dharma adepts could use 12 spiritual energy cultivating treasures in one go? However, after refining the pure yang qi, Lu Ping, who was at the peak of the 8th level of the core forging stage, was able to use the pearls to set up the natal gentian formation. The purity of Lu Ping's inner yuan was already at the peak of the core forging stage. Lu Ping stretched out his hand and touched the center of the 12 gentian pearls. A winding stream of spiritual energy formed a river. The river meandered straight up to the sky until it reached the top of his head. It was as if this river was the Milky Way that descended from the sky. Great River East Sword Technique. After refining the spirit snake's gallbladder, Lu Ping finally condensed a great skill talisman he wanted in the core space's Danxia. Only 3 years had passed. According to the history of the opening of the river source, he still had to stay in this cave space for another 2 years. He just didn't know if there was another cave space for him to explore. As soon as Lu Ping thought of this, the stone mansion center finally opened up again, leading downward. The winding steps disappeared as Lu Ping walked down. The cave space shrank once again, and the dense fog of spiritual energy in the center of the cave space continued to shrink. Which one would it be this time? The peak of the core forging stage. Lu Ping's eyes widened. The body of a snake, the feet of a crocodile, the horn of a pegasus. This was a wave of pure bloodline pressure rushed towards him. Lu Ping's bloodline suddenly throbbed. Chapter 785. This was the 3rd time Lu Ping had felt this kind of throbbing in his bloodline. This was a kind of bloodline suppression. The essence of all the cultivators in this world was contained in their bloodline. The quality of the bloodline could directly determine a cultivator's aptitude. That was why monsters were divided into top-level monsters with the direct bloodline of the 7th patriarch, as well as high-level, mid-level, and low-level monsters. This situation was not too obvious in the human race because everyone would have 7 kinds of bloodlines of the 7th patriarch. Therefore, although there was a difference in aptitude between human cultivators, in terms of bloodline alone, the gap between them was not as big as that of monsters. Therefore, it was rare for human cultivators of the same level to have bloodline suppression. This kind of situation mostly appeared between high-level and low-level cultivators. However, this situation had only happened to Lu Ping 3 times. The quality of Lu Ping's bloodline was originally not considered good. However, along the way of cultivation, perhaps because of the North Sea wave listening technique, or because of his unknown identity and knowledge, Lu Ping had not only integrated 3 kinds of water attribute Jiao bloodline when he was in the blood condensation stage, but also merged 2 bloodlines when he was in the core forging stage. Perhaps it was because of this that even when Lu Ping faced a Dharma adept like celestial phenomenon Laozu, he could not suppress Lu Ping through his bloodline. The real reason why Lu Ping felt this kind of throbbing in his bloodline was when he obtained the bloodstone in the fallen ruins, when he saw the Longhuai ancestor, and when Lu Ping's bloodline captured this kind of mysterious power in the land of the river source. However, now that Lu Ping was in front of him, this giant spirit beast that combined the green sea snake, the primordial giant crocodile, and the Pegasus actually made Lu Ping feel this kind of throbbing. However, what puzzled Lu Ping was how this giant spirit beast that was formed by the convergence of spirit energy could make his bloodline react. Just as the spirit beast in front of him approached, the strange dragons on the surface of the Jindan in Lu Ping's core space raised their heads and roared silently in the direction of the giant beast. Lu Ping suddenly felt his aura expand. Under the impact of the giant beast's aura, he was actually able to resist it unscathed. It was just a spirit beast at the peak of the core forging stage. Although Lu Ping knew that the monster in front of him was much stronger than the 3 spirit beasts he encountered before, he still had confidence in himself to win. The only thing he was suspicious about was the appearance of this spirit beast. Could it be a dragon? Or, more boldly, could this be the appearance of Jiao Daoren when he became a true spirit? It was not unreasonable for Lu Ping to think this way. After all, the source of the river was the place where Jiao Daoren fell from the sky and smashed into the ground. All the mysteries in the sacred lake must be related to one of the 7 saints of the Creator of the heavens. Before Lu Ping's strange thoughts could disperse, he saw a trace of blood red in the eyes of the giant beast. Moreover, this trace of blood red appeared from nothing and became more and more intense. Where did this red come from? When did the condensed spirit energy have color? Lu Ping's eyes flashed as he cast the 3 pure one's true pupils, to the extreme. A green light shone from the giant beast's eyes and extended to its back. Suddenly, thin red lines could be seen moving inside the giant beast's body and gathering in its eyes. When he looked at the source of these red threads, Lu Ping's heart suddenly sank. They were actually emitted from the heart of the giant beast. Could it be that the heart of this giant beast was not condensed from spirit energy? But before Lu Ping could think further, the giant beast in front of him had already let out a long roar. It raised its left paw and let out 5 clanging sounds of metal clashing. 5 rays of cold light intertwined with each other as it moved forward at an extremely fast speed, forming a huge wave of cold light that surged forward. Lu Ping sucked in a breath of cold air and exclaimed, "Thousand Snow Pile Sword." The dual flying swords in his hands did not dare to be the slightest bit careless. They also turned into a rolling sword wave and collided with the tide that was sweeping over. Like fireworks exploding in the sky, countless sparks exploded between Lu Ping and the giant beast in an instant. The 2 lights retreated and they were actually evenly matched. Lu Ping's expression became more and more serious. The strength of the giant beast in front of him clearly surprised Lu Ping. However, the divine ability that the giant beast used with its sharp claws just now was indeed of the same lineage as the Thousand Snow Sword art. Although there were too many differences between the two, Lu Ping was sure that there must be a connection between the two. A series of 5 sharp claws quickly stabbed. Although it did not use a great divine ability, Lu Ping could still see the oppressive momentum of the raging waves slapping shore sword art from this round of rapid attacks. The faintly autumn waters sword turned into waves and counterattacked the series of attacks. Instead, he used the raging waves slapping shore sword art. Lu Ping wanted to seize control of the battle from the hands of the giant beast. Perhaps it saw that the divine ability formed by the sharp claws could not gain an advantage over Lu Ping. A thick white fog rose around the giant beast's body. Its entire body was hidden in the white fog, and it would only reveal some of its claws when it attacked Lu Ping. It felt like its head could be seen, but its tail could not be seen. Lu Ping simply drew down the heavenly river from the sky and used the great river flow's east sword art. The 2 flying swords turned into a surging river that rushed into the white fog and wreaked havoc, leaving the giant beast with nowhere to hide. The white fog exploded, and the entire heavenly river actually collapsed. The two flying swords were flung away by the giant beast's long tail, and then it struggled out of the ruptured heavenly river. Its figure changed rapidly, and under Lu Ping's widened gaze, it gradually turned into a human form. It turned into a human form. Lu Ping looked at the slender middle-aged man in front of him. His face was handsome but also evil. His hair and beard were mixed with wisps of white frost, but it made him stand out even more, and his temperament was extraordinary. Who was this person? Could it be that the only disappointing thing about him was that pair of bloodshot eyes? Although they revealed killing intent and ruthlessness, they appeared dull and lifeless. However, from Lu Ping's point of view, the most eye-catching thing about this elegant middle-aged man should be his eyes. Half of the man's figure and temperament should be in his eyes. However, even without his eyes, this person's elegance had already made Lu Ping fall for him. If this person's real body was in front of him, it was unknown what kind of peerless elegance Lu Ping would have experienced. Just as the giant beast turned into a human form, a strange and bewitching power emanated from the person in front of him. However, in Lu Ping's divine sense, a small banner gently swayed. Lu Ping's vision immediately cleared up. He saw the white fog that had previously exploded gather in the person's hand to form rolling waves. The waves rolled up in midair, and then formed a vortex that rushed towards Lu Ping. What the hell? How could this giant beast's supernatural power be inextricably linked to the 12 orthodox techniques of the North Sea? Could it be that this spiritual Qi giant beast was really formed by Jiao Daoren imitating his own image in the past? Lu Ping displayed the water manipulation technique, and the momentum of the rolling wave of spiritual Qi suddenly stopped. Lu Ping also had the idea of playing tricks. Since the giant beast in front of him, whether it was in human form or monster form, the supernatural power that the giant beast displayed was more or less related to the 12 orthodox techniques that Lu Ping cultivated, then Lu Ping might as well display the corresponding methods and counter each move. However, what Lu Ping did not notice was that every time Lu Ping displayed the corresponding supernatural power, although it was launched later, he was often able to control the giant beast first. At the very least, he was able to equalize the situation in a situation where the giant beast took the initiative to attack. However, just as Lu Ping used the water manipulation technique to resist the opponent's attack, he saw that the originally calm wave of spiritual Qi suddenly formed a huge whirlpool. In the midst of Lu Ping's scream, a huge wave appeared out of thin air and fiercely slapped Lu Ping back dozens of yuan, almost hitting the stone wall. The water manipulation flag above Lu Ping's head was on the verge of collapse, and the cloud light 5 elements robe formed a huge colorful cloud cushion behind Lu Ping, counteracting the impact of the huge wave on Lu Ping. The blue wave's secret art could actually be used like this, but it was not as if he did not have a backup plan. Lu Ping suffered a hidden loss. His heart was filled with hatred, but his hands were not slow. His hands formed a hand seal, and from the huge wave of spiritual Qi, a strange flood dragon formed by sword light suddenly drilled out. It had the body of a snake, the legs of a crocodile, the tail of a fish, the antlers of a deer, and the ears of a cow. It bared its fangs and brandished its claws as it flew towards the man transformed from the strange flood dragon in front of him. Lu Ping originally did not intend to use the blue flood dragon sea disturbance secret art with the flowing stream sword, but in a hurry he could not display a more powerful supernatural power, so he could only use the blue flood dragon sea disturbance secret art. However, the cultivator in front of him, who was able to break through Lu Ping's great river flows east, showed a clear pause in the face of the blue flood dragon sea disturbance secret art. In a battle between experts, the slightest mistake could make a difference of 1,000 miles. Just as the middle-aged cultivator condensed from spiritual Qi also summoned a strange flood dragon from the huge wave of spiritual Qi to fight with Lu Ping, a huge black cauldron with 2 ears suddenly appeared above Lu Ping's head. In truth, rather than saying it was a huge cauldron, it was better to say it was an enlarged wine cup. However, just as the huge wine cup appeared above Lu Ping's head, the middle-aged cultivator fighting with Lu Ping seemed to instinctively sense something. The strange flood dragon that was fighting with Lu Ping's flowing stream sword suddenly exploded, and the flowing stream sword wailed as it was summoned back into Lu Ping's hand. The middle-aged cultivator couldn't care less about the damage the strange flood dragon's self-destruction would do to his body and turned around to flee. Where do you think you're going? Behind the huge wine cup, a delicate and pretty little girl suddenly appeared. She looked at the middle-aged cultivator who was about to crash into the stone wall and giggled. She reached towards the bottom of the huge wine cup and held it up. At the same time, she tipped it down towards the middle-aged cultivator who was about to crash into the stone wall. Come back. The little girl's crisp voice rang out. As expected, the middle-aged cultivator's feet stopped and he could no longer move. Chapter 786. Lu Ping didn't know why this little lady was willing to come out at this time because he knew very well that although Linglong had agreed to recognize him as her master, Lu Ping would need to advance to the Dharma phase before he could fully display his power. But this didn't mean that without the support of Lu Ping's essential energy, Linglong couldn't display her power. Otherwise, she wouldn't have almost escaped from Jiang Tianlin and Laozu. Just as Linglong pointed her wine cauldron at the middle-aged cultivator who was about to escape into the stone wall, he couldn't move his feet at all. Then he struggled violently and slowly retreated in the direction of Linglong's wine cauldron. Although the cultivator struggled with all his might, it was as if someone had completely restrained his weak point. No matter how he struggled, he couldn't get rid of Linglong's attraction. Lu Ping could see that the condensed spiritual energy on the cultivator's body was quickly evaporating at a speed visible to the naked eye. Strands of spiritual energy were stripped from the cultivator's body and then completely swallowed by Linglong's wine cauldron. The cultivator's body became more and more transparent, as if it would turn into nothingness under the power of Linglong's wine cauldron at any time. Linglong, why did you want to come out and join in the fun this time? Linglong rolled her eyes and said indifferently, this guy has the aura of pure yang qi. Pure yang qi? Lu Ping was taken aback and couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. Linglong looked at Lu Ping with a surprised expression and said, that's right, it's the pure yang qi. Didn't your Jinyuan also fuse with the pure yang qi? Otherwise, how could you have reached such a high level in just 100 years of cultivation without showing signs of instability? Lu Ping was dumbfounded and didn't know how to answer. After a long time he said, Linglong, is pure yang qi that important to you? Linglong said unhappily, what do you think? The reason why we spirit treasures are spirit treasures is because we can absorb pure yang qi after going through the thunder tribulation and strengthen our spirituality. If you don't have pure yang qi, why would I choose to follow you when you were in the core forging stage? Do you really think I care about the spiritual liquid in your hands? Lu Ping was embarrassed by Linglong's rebuke, but Linglong continued, but your mystic treasures that haven't awakened their sentience are ridiculously strong. I wanted to borrow some pure yang qi from them to replenish my strength, but they're all so stingy. I'm a spirit treasure after all, and I've survived a calamity. I've never been so humble before. Lu Ping smiled and wanted to change the topic, but he heard Linglong whisper, I don't know what good luck you have. You can actually refine pure yang qi when you are in the core forging stage. Why didn't you burn to death? And those magic treasures that don't even have spiritual wisdom not only have such strong spirituality, but after being nourished by pure yang qi, it is very likely that they will become spirit treasures in the future. Lu Ping smiled and no longer said anything to Linglong. At this time, the spirit cultivator had turned back into the strange dragon. However, no matter how hard he struggled, he could not escape from the attraction of Linglong's wine cauldron. The strange dragon displayed several kinds of magical powers that made Lu Ping envious. However, before these magical powers could be used on Linglong's wine cauldron, they were all dissolved and absorbed by the spiritual power that the wine cauldron had displayed. Linglong, your spiritual power is so magical. In the future, when you fight with people, won't your opponents not even be able to use their magical powers? Lu Ping looked at the strange dragon's face. The 3 magical powers that it had displayed were all easily dissolved by Linglong. His face was filled with shock. How can it be so easy? Linglong looked at him as if he was ignorant and inexperienced. She pursed her lips and said, let's not talk about the fact that this spirit beast is only at the peak of the core forging stage. Although its strength is not weaker than the Dharma adept, it has not been able to reach the Dharma stage. I, on the other hand, have gone through a tribulation and am comparable to a Dharma adept. How can it compare to me? Besides, this spirit beast is actually formed from a complete spirit meridian, but it was restrained by my natural magical powers. If other cultivators used magical powers, the magical powers originated from the cultivator themselves. Then it would not be so easily dissolved by the spiritual power. Although Lu Ping looked disappointed, he could not help but let out a sigh of relief. All magical powers could be said to be various ways of using inner yuan, spirit energy, and so on. If Linglong's spiritual power could make all magical powers invisible, then it would be too heaven-defying. However, after hearing what Linglong said, Lu Ping still could not believe it. He said, You said that this spirit beast was formed from a whole spirit meridian? Of course, everything has a spirit, not to mention the spirit meridian itself. It's just that these spirit meridian originally did not have the qualifications to become spiritual. It was just that someone used a great magical power to forcibly awaken its spirituality and transform it into various forms of beast. That's why it looks ignorant and has almost no self-awareness. It only exists in its primitive instinct to kill. Lu Ping listened to Linglong's narration and could not help but frown. He asked, what kind of person would have such a magical power to turn it into a spirit? Could it really be Jiao Daoren of the 7th Patriarch who opened the sky? Linglong sneered and said, you really dare to think, but it's hard to say with all the legends of the sacred lake. If it is really a trick left behind by Jiao Daoren, then it can be considered as your good fortune. Good fortune is good fortune, but who knows if there is any deeper meaning in the means left behind by such a person. If you fall into the trap of these big shots, then there is really no way to go to heaven and no way to hell. Just as the two of them were talking, the huge spirit Qi strange dragon finally turned into a thin shadow under the magical power of Linglong's spirit transformation. Linglong turned the giant cauldron in her small hand, and the wine cauldron quickly shrank to the size of a foot. However, it was still a little too big as a wine cup. Lu Ping looked over and saw a strange dragon the size of a gecko crawling at the bottom of the wine cauldron anxiously, but it could not escape. Well, that's it. This spirit meridian has been infiltrated with pure yang qi. This is also one of the necessary means to activate the spirit meridian. Next, I will separate the pure yang qi from this spirit meridian, and the rest of the spirit meridian is for you to absorb. Lu Ping chuckled and said, Linglong, you also know that I accidentally refined a strand of pure yang qi. Aren't you a little too greedy to keep it all to yourself? Linglong had an expression of, you have taken a big advantage, and said, without your true yuan, how can I refine and absorb the pure yang qi? Although the pure yang qi contained in this strange spirit qi strange dragon was absorbed by me, during the process of being nourished by your true yuan, a small part will still be returned to you. Moreover, after being filtered by my spirit treasure body, the benefits you will obtain will be even more. That's good. There is no time to lose. Let's start refining now. Who knows if there is another layer in this strange cave mansion? Lu Ping sat cross-legged on the ground. Linglong turned into a stream of light and poured into the wine cauldron. The wine cauldron enlarged again and slowly rotated above Lu Ping's head, making a buzzing sound. A white mist condensed like incense floated out of the wine cauldron. Then, as if being pulled by something, it poured into the top of Lu Ping's head. Lu Ping received this pure spirit qi from the top of his head, almost no less than a cultivator's true yuan. With a little refining, it integrated into Lu Ping's true yuan, which was now as thick as the Xianyuan heavy water. In the core space, the Dan Xia, which had become thinner and thinner because of the continuous improvement of 12 gentian beads and the condensation of magical talismans, was quickly restored under the continuous refining of the spirit qi. The purple Dan Xia continued to spread. Even at this time, in the center of the Dan Xia, Lu Ping's huge golden Dan seemed to have a life of its own. With a strange rhythm, it constantly absorbed the condensed essence in the Dan Xia, but it still could not stop the rapid expansion of the Dan Xia. The white jade lotus that had been floating under the golden Dan was included. The 12 gentian beads that were rotating around the golden Dan were also included. The 7 treasure thunder calabash swayed as if it was hesitating about something, but in the end, it did not escape. Several spirit-raising magic treasures made a low sound as the Dan Xia whistled, as if they were cheering for something. The surface of the Nachuan cauldron exuded a faint purple copper light. It seemed that the cauldron that had only condensed one treasure enchantment could also get some benefits from the expanding Dan Xia. However, although many of these magic treasures could get a lot of benefits in the process of the Dan Xia spreading, whether it was their natural self-absorption, or Lu Ping consciously urged these magic treasures to absorb to prevent the expansion of the Dan Xia. At this time they could not maintain the consumption of the spirit qi at the speed of refining the Dan Xia. The spirit qi contained in the strange spirit qi dragon that was refined this time was obviously beyond Lu Ping's expectation. This was also because Linglong suddenly intervened in the central plains, so Lu Ping did not have a complete understanding of the strength of the strange spirit qi dragon. Now it seemed that the strange spirit qi dragon obviously had many tricks that it had not used before it was restrained by Linglong. Lu Ping panicked a little. The true essence contained in the Dan Xia was second only to the essence of the golden core. If the Dan Xia continued to expand like this, once it filled the entire core space, and the golden core could not break through the original shackles to condense the Danxia again, then the only thing that would greet Lu Ping would be the explosion of the core space and the destruction of his body. This shackle was the bottleneck that Lu Ping faced in advancing to the 9th layer of core forging. As long as Lu Ping could break through this shackle, after advancing to the 9th layer of core forging, the amount of Danxia absorbed by the golden core would increase again. Coupled with the rapid expansion of the golden core when breaking through, it was inevitable that it would absorb a large amount of Danxia. In this way, the crisis of the true essence in Lu Ping's core space could be easily solved. However, the key now was that Lu Ping had fully activated the North Sea wave listening technique. He had tried to break through the barrier 7 or 8 times in a row, but each time he failed in front of the last layer. At this time, Linglong seemed to have lost control of her body. She only knew to inject the remaining refined spirit qi into Lu Ping's body. No matter how Lu Ping tried to communicate with her, there was no response. Chapter 787. Lu Ping's heart was beating like a war drum, and the blood vessels in his veins were like the waves of the Yulon River, crashing against the banks of the river. This was Lu Ping's 9th attempt to break through the bottleneck of the 9th stage of core forging. At this time, the core space had reached its limit, and the Dan mist had filled the entire space. If Lu Ping couldn't break through to the 9th layer core forging realm, then his heart core wouldn't be able to withstand the expansion of his arcane energy. However, if Lu Ping continued to break through to the 9th layer core forging realm, then he would have to continuously circulate the North Sea wave listening scripture to infuse the refined arcane energy into his heart core, further accelerating the expansion of his Dan glow. At this time, Lu Ping had reached a critical juncture. Just as Lu Ping's heart was burning with anxiety, Linglong, who had not responded for a long time, finally moved. A ball of purple light rushed out of the wine cauldron and entered Lu Ping's core space through his chest. Lu Ping was startled at first, but when he saw the ball of purple light, he was overjoyed. He quickly used his divine sense to take control of it, and then the ball of purple light began to evolve. Similar to the things Lu Ping had obtained from the 3 spiritual beasts, this ball of purple light was also a catalyst for the formation of a divine ability talisman. A large amount of Danxia purple mist gathered towards the purple light sphere. While the purple light sphere was transforming into a talisman, it absorbed a large amount of Zhenyuan essence in the core space for its own use. Only then did the expansion of the Danxia was temporarily controlled, and the pressure in the core space was greatly reduced. What kind of divine ability talisman would be formed this time? Lu Ping was naturally looking forward to it. A talisman quickly formed in the middle of the Dan mist. Lu Ping couldn't care less about the critical moment of his training, so he sent a strand of his divine sense into the talisman to investigate. Art of the Azure Serpent Sea Disturbance. Lu Ping curled his lips in dissatisfaction. Another sword technique that wasn't originally a great divine ability had been upgraded by him. Like the art of water manipulation and the art of sea deception. Although the art of the Azure Serpent Sea Disturbance played an important role in Lu Ping's early training, its quality wasn't at the level of a great divine ability. After Lu Ping absorbed the ball of purple light, Lu Ping could clearly feel that the art of the Azure Serpent Sea Disturbance had a qualitative improvement. However, Lu Ping was still a little dissatisfied. Why couldn't it be the art of the Azure Waves, or the art of all rivers flow into the sea, which were originally great divine abilities, or great divine abilities? This thought flashed through Lu Ping's mind. After all, it seemed that the formation of this thing was very difficult to control. However, Lu Ping took this opportunity to fully circulate the art of North Sea wave listening. His blood flowed in his veins, and with a thought, Lu Ping condensed a purple sword light on the surface of the talisman floating in the middle of the Dan mist in the core space, and completely integrated into his veins. After the purple sword light integrated into his veins, Lu Ping suddenly felt as if his veins had suddenly gained an indomitable momentum. It seemed that no matter what obstacles there were in front of him, he would inevitably have the confidence to break through them. Art of the East? What was the meaning of Art of the East? What was needed was an indomitable momentum and the drive to not give up until the goal was achieved. Pure Yang Qi. It turned out that Pure Yang Qi had such a magical effect. It contained a divine ability within the inner yuan, and it didn't need to be visible on the outside. It could kill people invisibly with just a wave of one's hand, and it could move according to one's heart. How carefree was this? Was this the realm of words become law? This realm was usually reached after a cultivator had advanced to the Dharma Adept stage and achieved a divine ability. How could Lu Ping still have the time to be surprised? With such a characteristic of the inner Yuan, it would be of great help to him in breaking through to the 9th level of the core forging stage. It was a good time for him to give it his all. Lu Ping worked hard to compress the purple Dan mist towards the golden core in the center of the core space. At this moment, the huge golden core was also covered with a layer of purple light. It was as if a layer of dull thunder had exploded in the core space. The golden core that sat motionless in the center of the core space finally moved under the influence of the North Sea wave listening technique. Lu Ping was overjoyed. Under his unremitting efforts, the last window paper of the 9th level of the core forging stage had finally split open a shallow crack. Everything was difficult at the beginning. As long as this crack was opened, Lu Ping believed that breaking through to the 9th level of the core forging stage would be a matter of time. The more water a dam was filled with, the stronger it would be. However, once the dam had an ant hole, it meant that the dam was not far from collapsing. Once the flood finally broke through the dam, it would definitely be a spectacular scene of 1,000 miles of water gushing out. The true essence in his body was like a never-ending river, wave after wave crashing into that crack. The golden core, which had been shaken by the red glow, once again let out a thunderous sound in the core space. The golden core, which was suspended in the center of the core space, finally began to rotate slowly. 8 strange dragons were constantly hovering on the surface of the golden core, as if cheering for something, and as if expecting something. At this moment, the purple Dan mist surrounding the golden core suddenly disappeared. The entire space filled with the Dan mist suddenly formed an empty space with the golden core as the center. The surrounding Dan mist quickly squeezed in and occupied the previous space. The periphery of the Dan mist in the core space suddenly shrank. Lu Ping, who was sitting cross-legged on the ground, finally let out a long breath. The 9th level of the core forging stage was no longer a problem, but the process was still very long. The Dan glow that suddenly disappeared around the gold core was completely absorbed by the gold core. The reason why this happened to the gold core, which was supposed to absorb the Dan glow gradually, was that an egg-like purple light spot suddenly appeared on the surface of the gold core. The 8 strange dragons were constantly hovering and flashing around this spot of light. The surrounding Dan glow was absorbed by the golden core at a speed several times faster than before, and then the visible purple lines on the surface of the golden core all the way into the purple spot of light. After an unknown amount of time, the purple spot of light finally let out a burst sound, and the entire core space seemed to reverberate with a strange sound. Under the cover of this sound, the originally surging Dan mist calmed down. The 12 gentian beads seemed to have stopped rotating in an instant, and the 7 treasures thunder gourd also became a lot more well-behaved. The Linglong wine cauldron floating above Lu Ping's head also seemed to sense something. The entire wine cauldron shook for a moment, as if it couldn't hold on any longer, and smashed onto Lu Ping's head. The light spot on the gold core emitted a dazzling purple light at the same time as the sound of the explosion. When the purple light dissipated, a strange dragon that was exactly the same as the other 8 strange dragons appeared on the surface of the gold core, but its body was a size smaller. It was circling and playing with the other 8 strange dragons as if it was celebrating something. The 9th level of the core forging stage was finally completed. Lu Ping used his divine sense to explore the situation in the core space while circulating his true yuan to consolidate his newly advanced stage. The Dan mist continued to decrease. Although there was a steady flow of spiritual qi from the Linglong wine cauldron, it still couldn't keep up with the speed of the golden core's breathing. This was especially true for the 9th strange dragon, which was originally the weakest, but now it was rapidly growing. Cultivators often needed about a year to consolidate their cultivation after advancing. Lu Ping used the pure spiritual qi from the Linglong wine cauldron to make a breakthrough in just half a year. With such an abundant supply of spiritual qi in the remaining half a year, Lu Ping easily consolidated his cultivation of the 9th level of the core forging stage. He no longer needed to worry about his cultivation fluctuating. It had been more than 4 years since Lu Ping entered the river source. At this time, the more peripheral spirit gathering areas in the sacred lake were ready to open one after another. The deeper one went into the sacred lake, the later the spirit gathering area would open. The final opening of the river source would be a year later. When Lu Ping and the other cultivators came out of seclusion in the spirit gathering area, who knew how chaotic the sacred lake would be? Rumble, rumble, rumble. Lu Ping stared blankly at the tremors on the ground. In the center of the cave mansion, A hole seemed to be gradually forming from nothing, from small to large. Sure enough, there was another cave mansion below. Presumably, the area of that cave mansion was even narrower than this one. Could this spirit-gathering area really have been created by Jiao Daoren with the horn on his head? The hole gradually expanded, and it looked like it could accommodate Lu Ping's body. Just as Lu Ping was about to walk out of the cave, he suddenly heard a long groan coming from the cave. It seemed to be far away, but at the same time, it gave Lu Ping a familiar feeling. Lu Ping's expression changed. How could it form so quickly? According to his previous experience, when the hole opened, the spiritual qi in the cave mansion had just begun to gather. After Lu Ping entered the cave mansion, the spiritual qi behemoth would form. However, this time, just as Lu Ping was about to walk towards the hole, a strong spiritual qi with a tyrannical impact suddenly spewed out from the cave mansion. This sudden explosive force caused Lu Ping to hurriedly stop his footsteps. The light curtain hanging down from the water control flag was directly pushed back by 3 feet by the residual force of the shockwave. Linglong jumped out of nowhere. Looking at the hole in front of her, she suddenly frowned and shouted, "Not good, the thing down there has already opened its spiritual wisdom, it's going to rush out." Lu Ping's heart trembled. A bluish-purple true essence emerged from behind him, and under the control of the water control art, it formed a huge true essence water net above the hole. After advancing to the 9th layer core forging realm, Lu Ping's arcane essence contained a trace of pure yang qi. With the help of the incantation charms, his arcane essence also contained the power of the water manipulation art. In the end, the water net he weaved was twice as powerful as before. "It's coming out." As soon as Linglong's voice fell, a white fog once again spewed out from the hole. This time it was different from the previous spiritual qi. Lu Ping could feel a strong vitality coming from it. It was a ball of extremely condensed spiritual energy. There seemed to be something hidden in the white mist, and it was impossible to see its head or tail. And it was precisely the thing hidden in the white mist that made Lu Ping's heart beat faster. He even felt a sense of a bloodline connection between the spiritual energy and the spiritual energy. Strange, strange, strange. Chapter 788. Bang, bang, bang. The water net that Lu Ping had set up broke several times under the impact of the white fog. Seeing that the water net was about to break, Lu Ping waved at the broken water net, and a strange dragon appeared above the white fog. The strange Jiao circled in the air and roared at the thing in the white mist below. Then it dove headfirst into the mist, causing the white mist to tumble and tumble. However, Lu Ping didn't know what was happening inside. His divine sense was blocked when it came into contact with the white mist. He could only sense it through the Azure Jiao Sea disturbance art. What was in there? Lu Ping did not dare to be careless. Seeing how easily the opponent had broken through half of Lu Ping's water control technique, Lu Ping knew that the opponent's ability was even higher than Dharma adepts like Qin Shui and Lao Zu, who had fallen at the hands of Lu Ping. The white fog tumbled and Lu Ping's gaze drifted over. His hands suddenly stopped moving. A golden scale flashed in front of Lu Ping's eyes, and it was immediately covered by the tumbling fog. It seemed that the thing hidden in the white fog had accidentally revealed itself in the process of fighting with the green dragon that Lu Ping had summoned. Lu Ping immediately activated the dual flying swords, and the beautiful autumn dew sword flew by Lu Ping's side, the tip of the sword pointing in the direction of the tumbling white fog. At this time, Lu Ping had already sensed that the green dragon that he had placed in the white fog was at a disadvantage in the battle with the thing hidden in it. Lu Ping flicked his finger and a stream of water stretched forward, then transformed into a long, thin sword. The long sword flew up high, opposite the dual flying swords, the tip of the sword also pointed at the white fog. The long roar from the white mist was filled with excitement. Lu Ping could sense that the green Jiao dragon was already at the end of its tether. The existence hidden in the white mist had dissected the green Jiao dragon, leaving it riddled with wounds. If it weren't for the fact that Lu Ping had summoned it with a spell, it would have died a long time ago. Lu Ping pointed to the empty space on the other side. There seemed to be a flash of blue in the air, but when he looked closely there was nothing there. The 4 flying swords hung around the cave mansion, their tips pointed at the white mist. At this moment, the white mist suddenly gave off a sound of collapse. Rain sprinkled out of the white mist and fell into the cave mansion at the bottom of the cave. Lu Ping made a sign with both hands, then suddenly put his hands together and shouted, "Ha!" The 4 flying swords hanging around the white mist shone brightly, and countless sword shadows separated from the 4 flying swords. In just a moment, the entire cave mansion was filled with the sword shadows of the flying swords, leaving only the space where the white mist was. All the sword shadows pointed their tips at the white mist, and the cold sword light gradually rose in the cave mansion, ready to turn into a killing intent at any time. The thing hidden in the white fog seemed to have sensed the unparalleled killing intent of Lu Ping's 4 flying swords. The white fog that was originally like boiling water seemed to calm down at this time, as if it was thinking or hesitating about something. At this time, Lu Ping suddenly felt a weight on his shoulder. Ling Long was already sitting on it. Looking at the white fog in the distance, Ling Long put her hand in front of her mouth and spat out a blood-red gem. She handed it to Lu Ping and said, "Here, this is what was left when I refined that strange lizard just now." The gemstone was only a little bigger than a fingernail, but Lu Ping could tell at a glance that this blood-red gemstone was made of the same material as the bloodstone he obtained from the secret land in the Fallen Star secret land. Lu Ping was slightly happy in his heart. He was about to reach out and take the gem, but suddenly he heard an angry roar in the white fog. The white fog that was originally confronting Lu Ping's sword formation suddenly rushed towards Lu Ping. The white fog that was previously rolled up suddenly stretched into a long cloud. A golden claw suddenly came out of the depths of the white fog and grabbed the blood-red gem in Lu Ping's hand. Lu Ping also guessed that the existence in the white fog seemed to have a snake-like body from the scales and half of the claws that were exposed during the white fog's turbulence. Was it because of this bloodstone? A thought flashed in Lu Ping's mind and he shouted, "Come on!" He made a gesture with one hand and shouted, "Gather!" The 4 flying swords joined together from 4 directions, forming a huge sword net. Countless sword shadows shuttled back and forth in it, like a huge meat grinder. No matter how strong one's strength was under this sword formation, one would be unable to deal with the omnipresent attacks. In the end, one's true essence would be exhausted, and only death awaited. The Sea of Hundred Rivers sword technique was the one that Lu Ping was most familiar with. He had studied it for the longest time. It was the most powerful sword technique, but it was far from reaching the highest level. Even though Lu Ping had gone through several fortuitous encounters, causing the Great River Flowing East sword technique to have the potential to become a supreme sword technique, Lu Ping could still feel that the profoundness of the Sea of Hundred Rivers sword technique was far from what the Great River Flowing East sword technique could compare to. Even the highest sword technique of the Surplus Heavens sect, the Surplus Heavens sword technique which had been passed down for a long time, might not be able to compare to the Sea of Hundred Rivers sword technique after it became a supreme sword technique. The Sea of Hundred Rivers sword technique could combine tens of thousands of swords into one. In Lu Ping's opinion, when this sword technique was practiced to the extreme, it could only be summed up in 5 words: one sword to break all techniques. In the beginning, in order to pursue the power of the sword technique, Lu Ping had already practiced the Sea of Hundred Rivers sword technique to the level of a supreme sword technique. However, he had taken a detour after all. The power of this sword technique, from the early stage to the late stage of the core forging realm, didn't increase much in Lu Ping's hands. It only grew along with Lu Ping's cultivation. It wasn't until Lu Ping helped celestial phenomenon Laozu overcome the second tribulation that Lu Ping realized that there was a problem with his swordsmanship. It took him another 10 years to gradually correct the mistakes he had made in the Sea of Hundred Rivers sword technique. Lu Ping's cultivation had just advanced, and he wanted to find an opponent to test his strength. Seeing that the existence in the white mist was able to easily break Lu Ping's supreme sword technique, the art of water manipulation, he was naturally interested in a battle. The existence in the white mist seemed to be able to sense the power of Lu Ping's sword technique. The slender cloud shook its body and swayed its tail. A mysterious force spread out in all directions, pushing away all the sword shadows that were shuttling in all directions. It was unexpectedly able to resist Lu Ping's sword technique. How could it be so easy? Lu Ping made a circle with his hands and shouted in a deep voice, "Turn!" The sword shadows that were shuttling in all directions had unknowingly arranged themselves into a strange shape. As Lu Ping shouted, the countless sword shadows were like an army that had been trained to command like an arm. They patted the neat formation and began to slowly spin with the white mist as the center. As the sword shadows spun, the huge sword formation began to gradually shrink. Countless sword shadows attacked the existence in the white mist, but they were all repelled after one hit. This caused the white mist to be unable to break free from the strangulation of the sword formation. Waves of angry roars came from the white mist, but it was unable to do anything to Lu Ping. Lu Ping's expression turned even more solemn. He could feel that his sword skill, was able to cause great pain to the existence in the white mist. However, he couldn't tell if he had caused any harm to the white mist by looking at its surface. Suppress its spirituality first, then I will weaken it. Ling Long, who was sitting on Lu Ping's shoulder, suddenly said. Lu Ping was startled and said, You? Didn't you say that this thing has already gained spirituality and can no longer be weakened by the spirit transformation technique? Ling Long had an expression that said she really couldn't communicate with him. She said, Can't I make a wrong judgment? Lu Ping had a speechless expression, but in his ears he heard Ling Long say, Although this thing has gained spirituality, it is the same as the previous 4 kinds of spiritual beasts. In the beginning, it was accelerated by magical powers, not natural growth. Therefore, it is possible to have spirituality. It is only because the great master who used the magical power to accelerate the growth of these spiritual veins was so heaven-defying that this thing can control such a powerful magical power with such a low spirituality. This is really incredible. Lu Ping already had some absurd inferences about the existence in the white mist, but he didn't say much. He just followed Ling Long's words and condensed a golden cloud in the sky. Then golden raindrops fell into the white mist. The art of moving clouds and summoning rain, and the medium that Lu Ping used to cast this magical power was the myriad poison paste. Just like how the existence in the white mist let out a long roar filled with endless anger because of Lu Ping's 100 River sword skill. This time, when the golden raindrops fell into the mist, it let out a roar filled with fear. Ling Long, who was sitting on Lu Ping's shoulder, swung her legs and said proudly, See, I said so. It's just that your myriad poison paste doesn't seem to be very suitable. The best method to destroy spirituality was naturally a divine sense attack. Taking advantage of the time when the existence in the white mist was hit by Lu Ping's art of moving clouds and summoning rain, Lu Ping's divine sense, which had become more tyrannical after advancing to the 9th layer of core forging, pressed down on the white mist with the force of Mount Tai. In one fell swoop, the white mist's isolation effect on divine sense was broken. Suddenly, a despairing roar came from the white mist, and Lu Ping's expression suddenly changed. Ling Long, who had long been ready to attack, saw Lu Ping's expression change. She didn't bother to ask for the reason and immediately hugged the huge wine cauldron in her arms. Then, she pointed the mouth of the wine cauldron in the direction of the white mist and activated the spirit transformation divine ability. The existence in the white mist struggled fiercely, but it was firmly bound in place by the huge whirlpool formed by countless sword shadows. After Lu Ping's divine sense invaded the white mist, the existence in the white mist seemed to become more and more fragile. Under the illumination of Ling Long's spirit transformation divine ability, it could only let out increasingly despairing and weak roars. The general situation was settled. Lu Ping let out a long sigh of relief. His previously fluctuating expression still carried a trace of inexplicable color. What did you see? What is that thing? It's so secretive that people can't figure it out. It's nothing. Maybe the great master who created this existence didn't know what it looked like. Or maybe he only knew bits and pieces of it and imagined it out of thin air. What do you mean? What don't you know? Your divine sense invaded the white mist. What is inside? Lu Ping turned to the curious Ling Long and said, It's better if you don't know. Chapter 789. The divine sense attack was very dangerous and there were many scruples. Even Lu Ping, who was considered a weirdo among the cultivators at the same level as him, did not dare to invade the opponent's body with his divine sense when the opponent was awake. That was simply courting death. The so-called divine sense attack could only cause harm to the opponent when the opponent also released his divine sense into the body and did not take any precautions. Once the opponent was on guard, the divine sense attack could only cause a tingling in the head at most. Previously, Lu Ping did not dare to invade the white mist with his divine sense because he was afraid that the existence in the white mist would take advantage of the situation and counterattack, causing Lu Ping to go for wool and come home shorn. After listening to Ling Long's words, Lu Ping knew that the opponent's spirituality had just awakened and certainly did not have many means to resist his tyrannical divine sense. Only then did Lu Ping take measures. However, out of caution, he still used the myriad poison paste's corrosive characteristics to temporarily distract the attention of the existence in the white mist. If you don't want to say it, then don't say it. What's so special about it? Ling Long turned her small face angrily, and the wine cauldron in her arms suddenly increased its strength to dissolve the white mist. She wanted to dissolve the white mist, and then the thing hidden inside would naturally be exposed. However, she still held a grudge against Lu Ping. She could only quietly glance at Lu Ping, but she saw that Lu Ping had a blank look on his face, and no one knew what he was thinking. Linglong wanted to absorb the white mist formed by the spiritual qi to see what was hidden inside, but Linglong was ultimately disappointed. Except for the golden claws that occasionally appeared in the white mist, until the white mist was almost completely absorbed, Linglong did not see anything else. How can there be nothing? The existence inside clearly showed some golden claws. Linglong angrily asked Lu Ping beside her, but Lu Ping made a helpless expression. He could only hate Linglong so much that she could bare her fangs and brandish her claws, wishing that she could skin him alive. Alright, stop messing around. Lu Ping pointed at the hole in the ground and said, "Let's go down and take a look at the 5th cave residence first." Sure enough, as Lu Ping had expected, the area of the cave mansion had shrunk once again. The entire cave mansion was now only 100 feet wide. Lu Ping couldn't help but rejoice. Fortunately, the existence in the white mist seemed to be in a hurry to escape from the cave mansion. If it had waited for Lu Ping to enter the cave mansion before fighting it, such a narrow space would not be very advantageous for Lu Ping. After looking around, there was no unexpected discovery, which made Lu Ping look a little frustrated. Linglong, who was next to him, suddenly said, "I have already stripped the pure yang qi contained in the white mist, but this time the pure yang qi in it is far beyond my expectations. The remaining spiritual energy is too strong. You'd better go into seclusion now. Otherwise, I won't be able to control it for a long time, and it will be a pity if the spiritual energy dissipates." Lu Ping said gloomily, "Alright, I'll cultivate for a while first. Anyway, this inexplicable space has reached the deepest part of the sacred lake. It will take 5 years for the spiritual energy to open up. There is still 1 year left." 1 year passed in the blink of an eye for Lu Ping, who was in seclusion. Linglong spat out a blood-colored gem from her mouth and handed it to Lu Ping. She asked with a displeased expression, "You clearly had the opportunity to advance to the peak of the core forging realm. Why did you put all your energy into condensing the 7th restriction for the white jade lotus?" The spiritual energy contained in the white mist in the 5th cave mansion was extremely pure, far exceeding Lu Ping's expectations. In just 1 year, Lu Ping's cultivation had almost risen from the early stage of the core forging realm to the peak of the core forging realm. He was only 1 step away from refining the 3rd heaven and earth spiritual item and condensing a gold core. With Lu Ping's current state, the 1st heaven and earth spiritual item he refined was the low-grade profound essence heavy water. The 2nd heaven and earth spiritual item he refined was the mid-grade myriad wonder dew. Moreover, he had refined 2 portions. Therefore, the heaven and earth spiritual item he needed to advance to the peak of the core forging realm could only be a high-grade heaven and earth spiritual item. Moreover, according to his current situation, 1 portion of high-grade heaven and earth spiritual item might not be enough. It wasn't that Lu Ping didn't have any high-grade heaven and earth spiritual items on him. The high-grade heaven and earth spiritual item Thunder Tribulation Water was just right for Lu Ping to refine. Unfortunately, Lu Ping only had 1 portion on him. A high-grade heaven and earth spiritual item Thunder Tribulation Water was extremely rare. If it was someone else, even if they couldn't refine a portion, they would fight to refine half a portion or even a few drops. However, when it came to Lu Ping, he gave up the opportunity to form a gold core because he didn't have enough Thunder Tribulation Water. If word of this got out, countless cultivators in the cultivation world would be so ashamed that they wanted to die. Then they would fly into a rage out of humiliation and kill Lu Ping. Moreover, Lu Ping's cultivation progress was different from that of ordinary cultivators. Ordinary cultivators only needed to replenish their bloodline 3 times in the blood condensation realm. However, Lu Ping had already replenished his bloodline 6 times. Moreover, he could clearly feel that it would be impossible for him to advance to the peak of the core forging realm and form a gold core without the replenishment of the Flood Dragon's bloodline. And this time, Lu Ping had already decided on the target of the bloodline replenishment. Ma Chenxi of the Pegasus clan, the 4th young master Ma of the Pegasus clan. This was also Lu Ping's condition for Jianghu to submit to him. Otherwise he wouldn't have come all the way to the West Baron just to kill Jianghu. After 5 years of seclusion in the land of spiritual convergence, 4th young master Ma should have already raised his cultivation to the peak of the core forging realm. In this case his bloodline was just right for Lu Ping's use. The huge amount of spiritual qi that was enough for Lu Ping to advance to the peak of the core forging realm was finally used by Lu Ping to upgrade the white jade lotus. This white jade lotus was the most important part of Lu Ping's natal gentian formation. Half of the power of the gentian formation was concentrated on this white jade lotus. Previously, when Lu Ping absorbed the spiritual qi from the giant beasts, one spiritual qi beast was enough for Lu Ping to upgrade the 6 gentian beads to the spirit nurturing level. However, when he used it on the white jade lotus, he only managed to complete the 7th restriction treasure. His 13 natal mystic treasures, including the white jade lotus, had all advanced to the spirit nurturing grade. It would be as difficult as ascending to the heavens in the future. But even so, if he could unleash the full power of the natal mystic treasure, even Lu Ping couldn't imagine how powerful it would be. In reality, even the current Lu Ping did not have the confidence that he could fully unleash the power of the gentian formation formed by the 13 spirit nurturing treasures. You have to advance to the transcendence level as soon as possible. What? Lu Ping looked at Linglong in shock. Absorbing pure yang qi twice in a row has been very beneficial to my body. I think I have to prepare for the second tribulation. If you don't have the strength of the transcendence level, won't you be a burden to me? Lu Ping looked at Linglong, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. Seeing her expression, Lu Ping gave up and said, all right, I will try my best to find suitable spirit water of heaven and earth. Right now, there is only one portion of tribulation water, which is far from enough for my current accumulation. Also, tribulation water of thunder is extremely difficult to refine. You know this as well. If I don't have complete confidence, I will never advance to the peak of the core forging level. Then what do we do now? 5 years have passed, and this damned place still hasn't opened. Do we still have to wait here? Although Lu Ping's face was calm at this time, he was a little nervous. Anyone who was locked in a secret plane for 5 years without knowing whether there was a way out or not was at a loss. I don't know if there is a 6th floor of the cave mansion. Now is the 5th floor. If it is really an inverted tower, it should be from the top. As soon as Lu Ping's voice fell, the slate under his feet suddenly cracked. With a crashing sound, a hole appeared in the soles of his feet. There is really a 6th floor? Lu Ping looked at the cave entrance with a strange expression. At the same time, he was on guard for any spirit beast that might rush out from the cave. But soon he realized that he was making a fuss over a minor issue. What appeared under his feet was only a cone-shaped stone pit, not a cave mansion. There were no spirit beasts in the cave either. Instead, there was only a cone-shaped horn that was 3 feet long and pointed downwards. It was a single horn that was perfectly straight. Boom. Lu Ping looked up. Originally, there was always an endless void above Lu Ping's head. At this time, a huge vortex suddenly appeared, and the light in the center of the vortex kept expanding. Finally, it formed a huge passageway that was big enough for Lu Ping to enter and exit. Lu Ping could see the scenery of the bottom of Sacred Lake through the passageway. The place where Lu Ping was at had opened. Lu Ping did not dare to think too much. He reached out and took out the horn-like object from the stone pit, stuffed it into his storage device, and then threw Linglong into the golden house. Immediately, a stream of water sprayed out from under his feet. Lu Ping stood on the stream of water and slowly rose until he disappeared from the mouth of the vortex. After Lu Ping left the cave mansion, the mysterious and strange cave mansion suddenly shook. Then huge rocks fell out of nowhere. Amidst the loud bangs, the cave mansion was slowly flattened. Then the water of Sacred Lake fell from the sky and filled the entire cave mansion. Lu Ping, who had left the cave mansion, did not notice everything that had happened after he came out. At that moment he was standing at the bottom of Sacred Lake. The water and moon-avoiding pearls hung high above his head, illuminating the surroundings of the bottom of the lake as much as possible so that Lu Ping could see further. However, Lu Ping immediately noticed that the undercurrent at the bottom of Sacred Lake that could distort spiritual force had already disappeared. Lu Ping's spiritual force could easily cover a distance of thousands of feet at the bottom of the lake. Something was wrong. Why was there no one in Sacred Lake? Lu Ping's expression immediately turned solemn. He quickly floated up to the top of the lake and soon arrived at a depth of 7,000 feet, where he had placed the 3 spirits in the 3 spirit gathering grounds. The protective formations of the 3 places had already been automatically activated. It was obvious that Samling had already come out. However, Lu Ping did not find the imprints left by the 3 people at the place where Samling had come out of seclusion. This was what Lu Ping had agreed to with the 3 of them. What exactly had happened? Lu Ping had a bad feeling in his heart. His intuition told him that the 3 spirits were in trouble. The biggest possibility was that the 3 spirits met with an accident the moment they activated the spirit gathering place. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been late enough to leave their mark on the three spirits. Chapter 790. Although Lu Ping was a little worried about Samling's safety, he was not anxious. When he left Samling alone in the land of spiritual convergence, how could he not know that Samling would come out of seclusion a year earlier than him? The reason why he did this was to give Samling a chance to train alone. Ever since Samling was born, he rarely left Lu Ping's side. The only time he left was when the three little guys caused a huge disaster. They actually killed Sage Xuanqin's disciple, Hu Lily's senior sister, which made Lu Ping furious. After that, they were not allowed to act alone anymore. However, it was impossible for Samling to stay by Lu Ping's side for the rest of his life. After all, they were green sea snakes, the noblest existences among the demon clan. They were also Lu Ping's biggest and closest assistants in the cultivation world in the future. How could they be sheltered by Lu Ping's wings? Moreover, with Samling's strength and the few magic treasures in his possession, after the seclusion in the land of spiritual convergence, Samling's cultivation would definitely increase to the 7th layer of the core forging realm. If the three of them joined forces, even a 9th layer core forging realm cultivator might not be a match for them. Unless they encountered people like Ma Chenxi, Li Tong or Xie Tianyang, even a cultivator at the peak of the core forging realm might not be able to stop the three of them. Thinking of this, Lu Ping's mood slightly calmed down. Then he immediately floated to the surface of the sacred fall lake. He wanted to see what was going on. Why was there not a single cultivator in the sacred fall lake? Where did everyone go? Lu Ping guessed that Samling's disappearance must have something to do with this matter. However, there was a faint worry in Lu Ping's heart, as if he had just neglected something. However, he could not recall this matter at the moment, so Lu Ping could only suppress this thought for now. Sixth Brother Lei, are we really going there? This time, although we did not manage to snatch the position from the one in the sacred fall lake, at least we managed to survive. Moreover, the spiritual energy in the river source is very dense. These 5 years of cultivation time have saved us at least 10 years of cultivation time. This is already a good deal. Why should we take the risk to compete with others for that thing? Stupid, do you know what it means to take something? Don't know? Don't know? Or don't know? Do you know Ma Zhen of the Tenma people? Of course, the leader of the Pegasus clan. Back then, when he was only at the mid-Dharma stage, he was able to fight against the great adepts of the Western Desert Palace. How could we not know such a heroic figure? Then do you know why Ma Zhen was able to take over the position of leader of the Pegasus tribe when he was only at the mid-Dharma stage all those years ago, and how he was able to fight against the great adepts of the Western Desert Palace as a mid-Dharma adept? Could it be because of the Stone of Dragon Blood? That's right. According to legend, the Stone of Dragon Blood was formed from the blood that dripped from Jiao Doran's wound after he was injured. It contains a large amount of the essence of Jiao Doran's blood. If we can integrate it, we may be able to reach the level of Ma Zhen in the future. Sixth Brother Lei, is what you said true? I heard that it's because the green sea snake appeared in the sacred fall lake. Now the Tenma people and the Koi clan are surrounding the green sea snake. Even the Shaozi sword Xie Tianyang of the 6 legendary swords of the Xiang Palace has rushed over? Stupid, the Stone of Dragon Blood has naturally fallen into the hands of the 3 green sea snakes. The Tenma people and the Koi clan will naturally not let it go. Think about it, even the Emerald Sea Spirit Serpent is here for this Flood Dragon Bloodstone, so it must be extremely important. Sixth Brother, even if you are right, don't forget that the green sea snakes are known as the descendants of Jiao Daoran. They are more terrifying than the Tenma people and the Koi clan combined. They are comparable to the behemoth of the Xiang Palace. If we go looking for trouble with the green sea snakes, wouldn't we be tired of living? Why are you talking back to me when I call you stupid? There is more than one Stone of Dragon Blood. Although the green sea snakes are strong, the Tenma people and the Koi clan are the real local snakes. In the West Wilderness, would they be afraid of the green sea snakes whose nest is far away in the East Sea? When the time comes, there will definitely be a chaotic battle. When that time comes, we just need to fish in troubled waters. Even if we can't get the Stone of Dragon Blood, it would be good to get the bodies of the elite disciples of the 2 clans and sections. It's better than the belongings of us itinerant cultivators. Sixth Brother is right. This time, we broke through the blockade of the Pegasus and Koi clans and entered the river source with the hope of advancing to the Dharma stage. Now that we haven't entered the sacred Lake of Dusk, we've only saved a few years of training time, but it won't help us advance to the Dharma stage in the slightest. If we can get the relics of the disciples who died in the battle, then this trip will not be in vain. If we're lucky enough to get 1 or 2 Flood Dragon Bloodstones, we'll have made a fortune. Yes, let's do it. Okay, let's go for broke. Under the surface of the Sacred Fall Lake, Lu Ping had turned into a stream of water and was quietly listening to the discussion of the cultivators by the lake. Lu Ping's water escape technique had become more and more exquisite after he advanced to the 9th level of the core forging realm. Although the cultivators were itinerant cultivators, their 8th or 9th level core forging realm cultivation was not weak among the cultivators of the same level. However, they did not notice Lu Ping, who was very close to them. After the few of them left, a tiny thread of water emerged from the palm-sized sage lake and gradually weaved into a person on the meadow beside it. Lu Ping squinted his eyes and looked in the direction where the group disappeared. He pondered for a moment and then also turned into a ball of water light and blended into the crisscrossing water net on the ground. No one knew where he went. Hundreds of years ago, the Flood Dragon Bloodstone appeared in the Sacred Fall Lake for the first time. At that time, it was obtained by Jianghu of the Koi clan. Jianghu refused the help of many experts of the Koi clan, including Li Tong's teacher, but in the end he was plotted against by Ma Zhen of the Tenma people. In the end, the Flood Dragon Bloodstone was obtained by Ma Zhen, and he became the leader of the Tenma people who was like the sun in the sky today. Jianghu, on the other hand, went through many hardships and finally died. Even his only son was killed by Lu Ping while he was overseas. This time, the Tenma people and the Koi clan went to war and did not hesitate to offend all the cultivators in the world in order to prevent others from entering the periphery of the river source. This was to create opportunities for the cultivators of the Pegasus and Koi clan to obtain more Flood Dragon Bloodstones in the Sacred Fall Lake. It was also Samling's luck that the Flood Dragon Bloodstone suddenly appeared near where Samling was in seclusion. When Samling came out of seclusion, the Flood Dragon Bloodstone caused Samling's bloodline to vibrate. This made the three of them instantly think of the bloodstone that Lu Ping had seen and heard Lu Ping talk about. Although Samling did not know that the bloodstone was the Flood Dragon Bloodstone, this did not prevent the three of them from understanding the value of the Flood Dragon Bloodstone. Unfortunately, at this time, the cultivators of the Pegasus and Koi clan who were searching for the Flood Dragon Bloodstone in the Sacred Fall Lake also saw that Samling did not put away the Flood Dragon Bloodstone immediately. When the two Tenma people saw that the three cultivators who had just advanced to the 7th stage of the core forging realm obtained the Flood Dragon Bloodstone, how could they care about Samling? They immediately rushed forward to snatch it. However, the two Tenma people were clearly out of luck. Although the two of them had higher cultivation than Samling, under Lu Ping's years of training and the Green Sea Snake's noble bloodline, even if Samling could not easily jump 2 or 3 stages to challenge others like Lu Ping, he was still not someone that two cultivators who were only 1 stage higher than the three of them could challenge. The two cultivators from the Heavenly Horse clan, who had underestimated their enemies, suffered greatly from the 3 spirits who had gone all out. The two of them were seriously wounded. When the two of them realized what was happening and wanted to retreat, the 3 spirits took advantage of the situation and killed one of them. If it weren't for the fact that the 3 spirits had too little experience in fighting alone, they wouldn't have let the other person escape. Fortunately, Samling immediately realized that he had caused a great deal of trouble. After a discussion, the 3 of them decided to retreat from Sacred Lake and hide, waiting for Lu Ping to come out of seclusion. However, the Tenma people had the advantage of numbers in the river source. After a while, through the special methods of the Tenma people, many Tenma people immediately took action and began to chase after Samling. Fortunately, at this time Ma Chenxi, who was cultivating in the spiritual energy gathering area 9,000 feet deep, had not come out yet. Although the Tenma people were chasing after Samling everywhere, they were like a group of dragons without a leader. Instead, Samling took the opportunity to injure and kill several of them. At this time the Tenma people were in an uproar. The Tenma people were used to running amok in the western wilderness. Especially in the last few hundred years, the Tenma people had risen strongly and had a faint momentum of becoming the #1 royal family in the western wilderness. When had they ever suffered such a great loss? Almost all the Tenma people who heard the news came to chase and intercept Samling. The movement of the Tenma people naturally alarmed the Koi people who were also concerned about the Flood Dragon Bloodstone. After the Koi people received the news, they immediately sent cultivators to intercept and kill Samling. After a fierce battle, Samling broke out of the encirclement by relying on the spirit-nurturing magic treasure in his hand. However, the Koi people also found out about Samling. Green Sea Snake. It was actually the Green Sea Snake. Both the Koi people and the Tenma people were shocked when they received the news. They immediately slowed down their pursuit of Samling. As the top demonic beast with the bloodline of the Flood Dragon, no one knew better than the Tenma people and the Koi people what the Green Sea Snake meant to them. How could the Green Sea Snake come here? This was the western wilderness and inland grassland. The Green Sea Snake had always dominated the East Sea. How could it come to the far west? Although everyone was puzzled, no one dared to hunt down the Emerald Sea Spirit Snake in broad daylight. No one dared to bear the responsibility. Once the Emerald Sea Spirit Snake came out in full force, both the Pegasus clan and the Koi clan would be annihilated in a single day. In the past, the primordial giant crocodile clan was very prosperous. Their strength was far superior to the current Tenma people. However, because they challenged the status of the Green Sea Snake among the demonic beasts with the bloodline of the Flood Dragon, several great cultivators of the clan were almost all killed in a day. The entire primordial giant crocodile clan was suppressed and forced to go to the North Sea. After thousands of years of recuperation, they barely had the appearance of a large force. However, they no longer dared to set foot in the East Sea. Until recently, when Ma Chenxi and Li Tong came out of seclusion and knew what had happened, Ma Chenxi scolded her subordinates for being as timid as mice. These three Green Sea Snakes only had the cultivation of the 7th level of the core forging realm. If the Green Sea Snakes really wanted to fight for the Flood Dragon Bloodstone, why would they send their disciples with such low cultivation? Moreover, from the description of her subordinates, these three Green Sea Snakes were obviously underage. However, they had such profound strength. It was obvious that they were the disciples of the Green Sea Snakes who sneaked out to play. If they killed them without anyone knowing, not only would they get the Flood Dragon Bloodstone, they would also be able to steal the bloodline of these three Green Sea Snakes. Why not? Chapter 791. Li Tong of the Koi clan also had the same idea. He and Ma Chenxi did not have many scruples about the Green Sea Snake like ordinary clansmen. Although the Green Sea Snake was powerful, no matter how powerful it would not infiltrate into the western wilderness. First of all, if they could not get past the Crystal Palace, the 5 holy lands of the human clan in the central region would not agree to it. What's more, the Green Sea Snake was only the strongest among the monster beasts with the Flood Dragon bloodline. It was not that there were no races in the Demon Clan that could compete with the Green Sea Snake. The few tyrannical monster races that were not inferior to the Green Sea Snake would not let this happen. However, just when Ma Chenxi and Li Tong led their respective subordinates to search for Samling, Samling had already realized that something was wrong and had already hidden away. However, the news about the Flood Dragon Bloodstone had spread like wildfire among all the cultivators who entered the river source. The powerful rise of the Pegasus clan in the past 100 years and the legendary deeds of the Tenma people, Ma Zhen, were all related to the Flood Dragon Bloodstone. The effect of the Flood Dragon Bloodstone was also known by many cultivators. More and more cultivators first followed the Pegasus clan and the Koi clan to search for Samling, and then began to organize themselves to search for Samling. With the expansion of the search team, although the river source was large, conflicts were inevitable. Although the various forces tried their best to suppress it, the relationship between them was already like fire and water. After hearing about the appearance of the Green Sea Snake in the river source, Xie Tianyang could not help but frown, but then a smile hung on the corner of his mouth. Even the Green Sea Snake is involved. This is interesting. Didn't the Green Sea Snake already have the Flood Dragon Bloodstone? Why would he be interested in the few pieces in the sacred lake and come all the way to the western wilderness? Interesting, really interesting. How can I miss out on such an interesting thing? Although Lu Ping had the intention to train Samling, he did not expect these three little guys to be able to perform so well. As Lu Ping made his way through the water net, he encountered several groups of cultivators who had joined forces to search for the Samling. Even though Lu Ping had advanced to the 9th stage of the core forging realm, he still felt his scalp go numb. 2 fists were no match for 4 hands. Unfortunately, De Bao's bloodline was that of a tiger, so he couldn't exist in this river source. Otherwise, with the help of De Bao's nose, he might be able to find some clues here. The Samling should know that I will come out of seclusion soon. Previously, perhaps because he suddenly fought with someone, he didn't have time to leave a mark near the spiritual energy gathering place, or he was afraid of being discovered by the people who were hunting him. Now that the Samling is hiding, he will definitely leave a mark so that he can find the 3 of them. Although the Samling was hiding, the many cultivators who were searching for them became Lu Ping's targets, especially the cultivators of the Tenma people and the Koi clan. They had been killing the Samling, so the area that the cultivators of these two clans were searching was most likely near the Samling's hiding place. As expected, Ma Chenxi and Li Tong had advanced to the peak of the core forging realm. Looking at the surging aura around them, it was obvious that their strength had made great progress, and they could advance to the transcendence stage at any time. It was already extremely difficult for Lu Ping to plot against Ma Chenxi alone. At this time, although Ma Chenxi and Li Tong were guarding against each other for the sake of the Green Sea Snake and the Flood Dragon Bloodstone, they had also joined forces. For Lu Ping, the two of them together were a thorny problem, not to mention that there were many elite disciples of the two clans around them. At this time, Lu Ping's divine sense moved, as if he had discovered something. A hint of joy appeared on his face. Lu Ping was about to make a move when Ma Chenxi and Li Tong, who were in the distance, seemed to have noticed something and looked in Lu Ping's direction. After a moment, the two of them suspiciously retracted their gazes, but Lu Ping had already disappeared. "Brother Li, I am not as good as you in underwater skills. I wonder if you have discovered anything?" Li Tong shook his head solemnly and said, "No, it's just that this feeling is not right. I always feel that someone is spying on us in the dark." "Yes, but there are very few people who can follow you and me without being discovered in this river source. Could it be Xie Tianyang? Don't forget Lu Xianping from the North Sea." Ma Chenxi suddenly remembered that Lu Ping had snuck within 300 feet of where the three of them were before he was caught. Her face couldn't help but sink. "We lost his trace in the sacred lake. 5 years have passed and we haven't seen him come out of the sacred lake. Could it be that the person just now was really him? Xie Tianyang's ability is not in the water. He has the highest possibility, but it's hard to say. Now that even the Green Sea Snake has appeared, even if someone who is on par with you and me appears, we won't be surprised." Samling was indeed nearby. At this time, Lu Ping finally noticed the mark left by Samling. However, the cultivators of this generation of Pegasus and Koi clans were searching frequently. Obviously, they also realized that Samling was hiding nearby, so they completely surrounded this generation. It was just that he didn't know where Samling was hiding. He could actually hide in the encirclement of the two clans for such a long time. Lu Ping followed the map. He could sense that he was getting closer and closer to Samling's hiding place. At this moment, Lu Ping suddenly stopped in the water. He quietly maintained the shape of a ball of water light, not daring to move at all. How did he find this place? Could it be that he can also recognize the unique mark left by the Green Sea Snake by Samling? Lu Ping quietly looked at the sparkling light in a pond not far away. From a distance, it looked like the light reflected by the water ripples. However, Lu Ping could tell at a glance that this was a brilliant concealment technique. It could use the light reflected by the water ripples to hide one's tracks. This person was none other than one of the 6 divine swords from Purple Sun Palace, Lesser Marsh Sword Xie Tianyang. At this time, Xie Tianyang was constantly changing his position with the light ripples. According to the mark Lu Ping had detected just now, there should be another mark left by Samling in the pond where Xie Tianyang was. If Lu Ping couldn't obtain this mark, then the clues to find Samling would be cut off. Lu Ping wasn't confident that he could sneak into the pond where Xie Tianyang was without being discovered by Xie Tianyang. This was because Lu Ping could sense that Xie Tianyang's cultivation was even higher than Ma Chenxi and Li Tong's. 5 years ago, the four of them had a chaotic battle in Sacred Lake. Lu Ping sensed that Xie Tianyang's strength might not be much higher than Ma Chenxi's and Li Tong's, but he was indeed stronger. 5 years later, Xie Tianyang seemed to have widened the gap between the two sides. Lu Ping looked at the constantly flickering light in the distance. No one knew what he was thinking about. After a moment, the corners of Lu Ping's mouth suddenly hung a trace of a smirk, and then the light of water retreated to the back. "Report." Ma Chenxi's spirit rose and she said, "Did you find something?" The cultivator of the Tenma people obviously didn't expect Ma Chenxi to ask so eagerly, and was suddenly stunned. Seeing that Ma Chenxi's joyful face was about to darken, the cultivator seemed to have woken up from a dream and hurriedly said, "Not yet, but my subordinates found something else." Ma Chenxi impatiently waved her hand and said, "Say it, say it." The cultivator of the Tenma people glanced at Li Tong, who was next to him. Seeing that Ma Chenxi was about to get angry, he hurriedly said, "Fourth young master, it's Xie Tianyang of Ziyang Palace. At this time he is hiding in a pond less than 10 miles away from here. He seems to be searching and seems to be waiting for something." Li Tong sneered and said, "If Xie Tianyang is hiding, can you find him?" The cultivator of the Tenma people's face turned red. Seeing that Ma Chenxi was about to get angry again, he hurriedly explained, We naturally didn't find Xie Tianyang personally, it's that Zhang Jiming of the Western Desolate Palace. He has a strange treasure in his hands that can easily find hidden cultivators. We sent several clansmen to follow him, but they were all easily shaken off. However, he didn't guard against the disciples of some of our clan's subsidiary clans. Zhang Jiming has already secretly gathered a group of people for the Spear Dragon Bloodstone. In order to prove to everyone that he has already grasped the clues to the hiding place of the Green Sea Snake, he leaked the news that Xie Tianyang was hiding in the pond ahead to win everyone's trust. Ma Chenxi looked at Li Tong and said, "The divine searching mirror of the Western Desolate Palace, other than this item there is nothing else." Previously that Lu Xianping intended to follow the cultivators of the Western Desolate Palace into the land of the river source, but unexpectedly, Zhang Jiming used the divine searching mirror to backstab him, and he was almost injured by the hands of the third brother. There should be no mistake. Li Tong pondered for a moment, then suddenly raised his head, looked at Ma Chenxi and said, "Brother Ma, don't forget our agreement. This time, I will help you, the number of Spear Dragon Bloodstones will be split 40 to 60, you get 60, I get 40. The Koi clan was not as powerful as the Tenma people, so the Tenma people naturally wouldn't split the treasure equally with the Koi clan. Good. Ma Chenxi was overjoyed and said, "As long as you and I join forces, that Xie Tianyang will definitely not be our opponent. After all, Xie Tianyang is a cultivator of the human race and he comes from the Purple Sun Palace, so he is the common enemy of our demon race. However, we still have to be careful of that Lu Xianping. This person has not shown himself until now, and his strength is on par with ours. We really have to be on guard against him. Brother Li is right, but this time we naturally won't spar with him. If he interferes, our brothers in the clan might bully him with numbers. If we get rid of him, wouldn't there be one less competitor in the cultivation world? Could it be that Junling, who is far away in the North Sea, would still dare to stand up for him?" Although these words were directed at Lu Ping, the two of them were clear in their hearts that the same logic could also be applied to Xie Tianyang, and the value of getting rid of Xie Tianyang was even greater than getting rid of Lu Xianping, who told Xie Tianyang to be alone, and even have his hiding place discovered. Ma Chenxi and Li Tong didn't mind getting rid of a competitor for their own future, let alone a competitor from the Purple Sun Palace. To be on the safe side, the two of them still brought their own clan's disciples to outflank Xie Tianyang's location. Ma Chenxi and Li Tong also understood that for a person like Xie Tianyang, even if the two of them joined forces, although they could defeat him, it was absolutely impossible to make him stay. Since that was the case, they could only combine the strength of everyone. Even if they couldn't make him stay, they had to beat him until he was in pain, cripple him, and beat him until he no longer had the ability to compete with opponents of the same level. Chapter 792. Lu Ping naturally knew that Zhang Jiming had a treasure that could detect and hide his tracks. In fact, this was also an important reason why Zhang Jiming could gather a portion of the cultivators who entered the river source. With the God-searching mirror, as long as they found the right direction, they might be able to find the hidden Green Sea Snake. What Lu Ping wanted to do was to beat him at his own game, but he didn't expect that the effect of the art of sea deception would be so amazing after it was upgraded. It made Lu Ping, who had thought of several countermeasures, feel that it was too easy. Although Zhang Jiming's God-searching mirror could easily find the people hiding around, it was not enough to distinguish the identity of the people hiding. Lu Ping used the art of sea deception to transform into Xie Tianyang's appearance, and easily led Zhang Jiming to the vicinity of the lake where Xie Tianyang was hiding. After that, Lu Ping took the opportunity to get rid of Zhang Jiming's tracking, and Zhang Jiming then found the real Xie Tianyang hiding in the lake. What happened next was as Lu Ping expected. The actions of Zhang Jiming and the others really couldn't be hidden from the Tenma people and the Koi people. Just when Zhang Jiming led a group of cultivators to the location where Xie Tianyang was, Ma Chenxi and Li Tong were already preparing to attack Xie Tianyang from the front and back. Ma Chenxi didn't know that a huge net that was plotting against him was already slowly coming towards his head, and Xie Tianyang was also caught in the crossfire even though he was lying down. He was actually surrounded by nearly 100 cultivators from 3 parties, and he didn't even know why. Ma Chenxi flew at low altitude with 20 to 30 Tenma people cultivators. The dozens of Tenma cultivators had different levels of cultivation, and they pulled out a distance of tens of feet at low altitude. At this moment, Ma Chenxi, who was flying at the front, suddenly stopped. The Tenma people cultivators behind him didn't know what was going on, and when they looked around they heard Ma Chenxi suddenly shouted in a deep voice, Who is it? Come out. As soon as Ma Chenxi's voice fell, the Tenma people cultivators who came with him didn't know what was going on, and when they looked around they heard Ma Chenxi suddenly shouted, "Who is it? Come out." Many of the Heavenly Horse clan cultivators had just turned around when they felt a strong wind beside their ears. When they looked up, Ma Chenxi had already arrived at the place where the scream came from. A Tenma people cultivator who had just advanced to the late stage of core forging realm had fallen to the ground with his eyes wide open. There was a bowl-sized hole in his chest, his heart had been smashed, and a storage magic tool at his waist had been taken. Just when Ma Chenxi arrived, two light had already flashed in the sky. The cultivators seemed to be extremely proficient in the way, and they didn't give the Tenma people a chance to chase. Ma Chenxi was furious, and the light under her feet flashed, and she had already chased after the two figures in front of her. The Tenma people cultivators behind her hurriedly followed, but under Ma Chenxi's full speed, the distance between him and these cultivators was getting further and further away. A Tenma people cultivator who had been following behind Ma Chenxi was chasing after Ma Chenxi, and at the same time he looked at the cultivator on the ground and said in a low voice, "Ma Gang." Back then he was also a person who was praised by the leader. What a pity. No wonder fourth young master is so anxious. A few Tenma people cultivators who were in the 8th and 9th stage of the core forging realm caught up and asked him, "Ma Zhongshan, just now you and fourth young master were the fastest. Did you see clearly who the person who attacked Ma Gang was?" "Who else could it be? It's the infamous lone killer Lei Laolu of the Western Wilderness. Back then, I heard that he was also someone who could injure a Dharma adept as a late-stage core forging realm cultivator. However, 100 years ago he had too many enemies in Central Plains, so he came to the Western Wilderness to settle down. I didn't expect him to also come this time, but the strange thing is that he actually has help this time." "Humph, without help he dares to provoke the Tenma people?" Ma Zhongshan's nostrils puffed out a gust of hot air and said, "That direction is where the motley crew that Zhang Jiming gathered is, right?" Although the cultivator of Tenma felt that this matter was a little strange, he still replied, "Yes, could it be that this Lei Laolu and Zhang Jiming are in cahoots?" That Lei Laolu is indeed audacious, but without the support of the Western Wilderness Palace, even if you gave him 100 guts, he still wouldn't dare to brazenly assassinate a cultivator of our clan. Ma Zhongshan suddenly stopped, and the many cultivators of the Tenma people behind him also stopped. Ma Zhongshan turned to the cultivators of the Tenma people and said, "Let's not chase after fourth young master for now, we can't catch up even if we want to. Right now it's best for us to gather together and use our 10,000 galloping horses demon soldier formation to meet up with Li Tong of the Koi clan at the lake where Xie Tianyang is. Fourth young master isn't here, we can't let anyone else take advantage of us." "Then what about fourth young master? He is chasing after them alone. If anything happens to him, we won't be able to get away with it. The other party has the advantage in numbers." Ma Zhongshan raised his eyebrows and said proudly, "Do you think Zhang Jiming and those other good-for-nothings can stop fourth young master? Among cultivators of the same level as us, even Xie Tianyang of the Ziyang Palace can't defeat fourth young master." But the other cultivators of the Tenma people originally wanted to say something, but they heard Ma Zhongshan say, "Fourth young master will definitely be fine. Everyone, don't forget why we entered the river source. The stone of flood dragon blood is of great importance." This time the news was leaked for no reason, causing us and the Koi clan to be quite passive. Otherwise, Zhang Jiming wouldn't have gathered so many cultivators to go against us. Seeing that the other cultivators of the Tenma people were listening to him, Ma Zhongshan smiled proudly in his heart and said, "Don't worry about fourth young master, he has always been arrogant, and his strength is there for all to see. Normally, he doesn't even listen to the words of the patriarch, but who would dare to disobey the patriarch's orders?" The cultivators of the Tenma people all shook their heads. How could they dare to compare themselves to Ma Chenxi? Ma Zhen's prestige in the Tenma people was very high, he was a person of his word, and his rules were strict. Many of the younger generation of the Tenma people were both respectful and afraid of him, even Ma Chengwang and the others were extremely afraid of him. Only Ma Chenxi dared to go against his own father, but he had never been punished. Ma Zhongshan continued, "The stone of flood dragon blood was specially ordered by the patriarch, fourth young master can ignore it, but we can't. If we are late and that green sea snake escapes and falls into the hands of Xie Tianyang, or is captured by Li Tong and the others, then we will have to bear the wrath of the patriarch." Not to mention that Ma Chenxi had gained a subordinate who thought he was smart, he didn't even know that there was no backup behind him. Even if he knew, with Ma Chenxi's arrogant personality, he wouldn't take it to heart. After that, sixth brother Lei killed a cultivator of the Tenma people. Although he was closely chased by Ma Chenxi, as an assassin, sixth brother Lei was able to move unhindered in the cultivation world for many years without being killed by anyone, so he naturally had his own set of skills. Just this escape technique alone was quite unique. Ma Chenxi looked at sixth brother Lei, who had been playing hide and seek with her for almost an hour, and finally slowed down because of the large amount of true essence in his body. She couldn't help but nod her head. It was just that his cultivation method was a bit lacking, otherwise it would really take some effort to catch up to this person. But who was the cultivator that was following sixth brother Lei? Although this person didn't seem to have an escape technique like sixth brother Lei, but with sixth brother Lei's help, he was able to persist until now, so he could be considered to have some ability. Otherwise, it wouldn't be difficult for sixth brother Lei to persist for another hour. Seeing that sixth brother Lei was about to be caught up by Ma Chenxi, he saw a cloud of white mist on the meadow in front of him. Sixth brother Lei saw the cloud of white mist and was instantly overjoyed. He dragged the cultivator behind him and plunged headfirst into the white mist. Playing this kind of trick in front of this young master, what's the use? There was a hint of contempt in Ma Chenxi's mouth. Her figure did not stop at all. A huge divine thought with the coercion that only a Dharma manifestation stage could have, like a gust of wind, entered the white fog first. Then, the cyan escape light that Ma Chenxi's figure transformed into also disappeared in the white fog. The meadow suddenly became quiet, only the 2 to 3 feet long grass on the ground was constantly swaying in the wind caused by Ma Chenxi's light. The white mist didn't change in the slightest after Ma Chenxi entered. It was still like a cloud that fell on the ground, changing shape with the breeze, but there wasn't the slightest movement coming from inside. In the white mist, after sixth brother Lei and the cultivator behind him entered the white mist together, sixth brother Lei's body softened and fell to the ground. Fortunately, this sixth brother Lei was an assassin. Although the cultivation method and the true essence condensed in his body were ordinary, his willpower was first class, which made the cultivator behind him quite admire. Sixth brother Lei turned to look at the cultivator behind him and said fiercely, "I've done what I promised, now I've even offended the Tenma people and am being chased by that fourth brother Ma. What else do you want?" The cultivator behind him smiled silently and didn't say anything. He turned his body slightly back, seemingly checking where Ma Chenxi had gone. Sixth brother Lei saw that this person didn't care about him, but as an assassin, how could sixth brother Lei not have a backup plan? A small blue poisonous needle floated behind sixth brother Lei's palm that was supporting the ground. It seemed that now was the best time to send this poisonous needle into the body of the person in front of him. Sixth brother Lei's expression changed, but in the end he still pressed the poisonous needle into his body, returning to the core space along his blood vessels. Sixth brother Lei wasn't stupid, although his escape technique was considered excellent, but if it wasn't for this person's strong true essence, even two of him wouldn't be able to escape from Ma Chenxi. He also saw that the person this person wanted to plot against was Ma Chenxi. Sixth brother Lei, was very clear about what kind of person Ma Chenxi was. A person who dared to plot against Ma Chenxi was definitely not someone he could afford to offend. The cultivator expressionlessly looked back at sixth brother Lei, and sixth brother Lei suddenly felt a chill. It seemed that everything he did just now was under the control of the cultivator in front of him. At least you have some self-awareness, but I am quite interested in the poison on your poisonous needle. After this matter, you will stay by my side. That poison may be of some use to me. Sixth brother Lei's face turned pale. Sure enough, everything he did could not hide in front of this person. Thinking of the suffering he had suffered in the hands of this person before, sixth brother Lei couldn't help but feel discouraged. In the end, as if he had accepted his fate, he simply sat cross-legged on the ground and began to restore the true essence in his body. The cultivator looked at sixth brother Lei and found it a little funny. Then he saw the cultivator's figure shed like a stream of water. At this moment, an overwhelming pressure rushed in from outside the white mist. Lu Ping took off the sea deception technique and looked in the direction of the pressure with some surprise. He didn't expect that Ma Chenxi's divine sense cultivation was not weak. Her cultivation was at the peak of the core forging stage, but her divine sense cultivation was not weaker than that of a transcendent stage cultivator. Moreover, she had completely awakened the flood dragon bloodline. Presumably, the golden core in the core space had already begun to nurture a transcendence embryo. Chapter 793. Lu Ping was now making use of the time difference. He wanted to kill Ma Chenxi before the practitioners of the Tenma people came to support her. Therefore, Lu Ping did not hesitate to risk exposing his identity and kidnap this sixth lay to be his own bait. Fortunately, after Lu Ping condensed the art of deceiving the heavens and seas into a great talisman, this technique seemed to be more and more mysterious, as if it really had the magical effect of deceiving the heavens and seas. Ma Chenxi chased behind for nearly an hour, but she did not notice that the person beside Sixth Lay, who looked like a burden, was the biggest reason why Sixth Lay could persist for so long under her pursuit. The only thing that Lu Ping did not expect was that the practitioners of the Tenma people did not follow Ma Chenxi this time under the persuasion of a person who thought he was smart. However, this accident would not benefit Ma Chenxi in the slightest. Lu Ping did not know that the practitioners of the Tenma people did not chase after him, so this time he had to go all out. An elite disciple of a large force like Ma Chenxi must have endless magic treasures on her, and countless life-saving methods. If he could not kill her in an extreme time once this person was free, even if he still could not win against Lu Ping, it would be extremely difficult for Lu Ping to kill this person. Fortunately, so far, everything was still going according to Lu Ping's expectations. The pressure of Ma Chenxi's divine thoughts directly broke through the maze formed by the white fog, and startled Sixth Lay, who was sitting cross-legged on the ground, awake from his meditative state. His face became pale and weak and he muttered, "It's over, it's over." With this kind of strength, even the idiot in the early Dharma stage who was almost killed by me might not be her opponent. This time I'm dead for sure. Sixth Lay still wanted to say something, but he saw that Lu Ping suddenly turned his head and looked at him with a smile that was not a smile. Sixth Lay's throat was in a mess, but he finally swallowed the words back into his stomach. Then Sixth Lay's eyes widened again because he saw that at the feet of Lu Ping, a white lotus emitting a dense color suddenly appeared out of thin air. Lu Ping stood on the lotus throne as the petals around him bloomed one by one. The petals flickered with talisman patterns that looked like nimble tadpoles. Then 12 light beams condensed from pure true essence suddenly shot out in 12 different directions in the white mist. In the white fog, 12 thicker clouds of fog suddenly condensed. When the 12 beams of light shot out, the 12 clouds of fog suddenly whistled and dispersed, and then turned into 12 strange dragons made of spiritual qi, setting off endless waves of fog in the white fog. Sixth Lay could clearly feel that at this time, the entire white fog had turned into an impenetrable cage. Formation diagram. That lotus is a formation diagram, a spirit nurturing level formation diagram, and there are 12 formation bases, which are actually spirit nurturing level magic treasures. He has actually already set up the formation bases here. This is a natal formation. How is this possible? How is this possible? Sixth Lay watched as Lu Ping suddenly set up the natal gentian formation, and the expression on his face could no longer be described as one of shock, but more like he had seen a ghost. Lu Ping once again turned back to look at the dumbfounded Sixth Lay, and said with some surprise, "I didn't expect a lone bandit like you to have such knowledge. Looks like there are still many stories about you." Sixth Lay was shocked, but his eyeballs could not help but look at the constantly changing wind and clouds around him, as if there was something there that he could not resist. He is clearly only at the 9th level of core forging. How can he set up the natal formation? The natal formation requires a huge amount of spiritual yuan, and it is said that only the rare geniuses of the 5 great holy lands can accumulate enough spiritual yuan to activate the natal formation after advancing to the Dharma phase. This Lu Xianping is only a disciple of an ordinary sect in the North Sea. How can he be more powerful than the direct disciples of the 5 great holy lands? 13 spirit nurturing magic treasures. Even the most powerful 7 ultimate sky hurt sword of the Ziyang Palace could only barely control 7 spirit nurturing flying swords to set up the 7 ultimate sky hurt sword formation after advancing to the Dharma phase. He was also known as the Ziyang Palace's first person in 3,000 years. If Sixth Brother Lay didn't dare to think any further. Just at this moment, a loud sound rang out from the depths of the white fog, followed by a scream filled with terror. Sixth Brother Lay knew that this time, Ma Chenxi of the Heavenly Pegasus clan was going to suffer a huge setback. Ma Chenxi only had 2 things to do in the river source this time. One was to condense a 9th level golden core, which would give him the confidence to achieve the same achievements as his father in the future. The second was to find the Dragon Bloodstone, which was the foundation for the rise of the Pegasus clan, to dominate the Western Wilderness, and even to challenge the status of the Green Sea Snake in the future. It was also the key to whether Ma Chenxi could achieve greater achievements than his father in the future. Now that he had completed one task, as long as he could get the Dragon Bloodstone, Machensi was confident that in the future, his achievements would inevitably surpass his father, and the Pegasus clan could even completely overturn the status of the Green Sea Snake as the #1 clan of the Flood Dragon bloodline. With a resolute might, Machensi's figure followed her divine sense and crashed into the white fog. Thus there was the cry of alarm filled with fear just now. Life Source Array. As the most outstanding disciple of the Tenma people, Machensi not only had the best cultivation among his peers, but his insight was also not bad. Just after Machensi crashed into the white mist, the whole white mist rolled, and without a trace of warning, a huge Yuan-Chi cage had already enveloped this part of the world. 12 strange Yuan-Chi giant dragons were faintly discernible in the white mist. It was really difficult to see their heads and tails, but it had already blocked all his escape routes. This was a plot against him that had been premeditated for a long time. Fourth young Master Ma immediately reacted, but unfortunately at this time he had already broken in. In the white mist, the pressure that Machensi brought previously was not weaker than the pressure of the Dharma phase stage. In front of this life source array, was like a clay ox entering the sea, a joke. Who is it? Machensi asked in a stern voice. Who set up such a trap to make things difficult for me? In the empty space, only Machensi's stern voice kept echoing, as if it was constantly helping Machensi vent the trace of uneasiness that was mixed in the roar. How could he not know that in the cultivation world no one could set up a life source array at the core forging stage, but now if he was not trapped in someone else's life source array, then what was it? A Dharma phase cultivator? Absolutely impossible. In the tens of thousands of years, when had a Dharma phase cultivator ever broken into the land of the river source? Moreover, a Dharma phase cultivator who could set up a life source array would not need to go through so much trouble to plot against him. Most likely he would not even be able to withstand a few of the other's magical powers. Could it be that there was really someone who could set up a life source array at the core forging stage? Thinking of this, Machensi's mind calmed down. Even if someone could set up this life source array, so what? Could he activate it? Even if he activated it, could it last long? As long as he risked his life to withstand one or two of the opponent's attacks, this life source array would definitely collapse because of the opponent's inner yuan. At that time, it would be up to him to decide whether to stay or leave. Machensi touched the storage ring on his finger. There were 3 registration items that he got from his father, thinking that there was still hope for him to withstand one or two of the opponent's attacks. From the moment Machensi broke in to the moment he realized that he had been tricked, it was only a short moment. Just as Machensi's mind was spinning and he reached out to touch the storage instrument on his finger, in the empty space of white fog, a cold and clear voice suddenly sounded, "Strike the god." The white fog suddenly rolled like boiling water, and 12 strange Yuan-Chi dragons rushed towards Machensi together. When each giant Yuan-Chi dragon flew, it would draw a white fog mark in the sky, and each fog mark seemed to appear out of thin air. Without waiting for one to dissipate, another had already formed in the sky. For a moment, it was as if there were countless Yuan-Chi in the sky, with Machensi as the center, weaving a dense net of Yuan-Chi. The moment the opponent made his move, Machensi knew that the opponent wanted to end the battle quickly, so he was even more certain of his previous guess. Launching such a large-scale formation, although powerful, would not last long. Once the opponent's inner yuan was exhausted, she would definitely be able to escape. As long as she left the land of the river source, she would definitely tell her father about this as soon as possible. This person could actually use a life source array at the core forging stage, and also become enemies with the Pegasus clan. If this person were to advance to the Dharma phase in the future, how many people in the world would be able to stop him? She had to kill this person before he grew up. Machensi did not bring out her magic treasures. Instead, a golden-colored talisman appeared in her hand. She tore the talisman apart and a golden light suddenly blossomed. A golden sphere of light suddenly appeared, surrounding Machensi. Next, golden thorns shot out from the sphere of light in all directions. Lu Ping, who was also hidden in the white fog, frowned. Talisman weapon. That might not be able to save your life. Countless golden lights shot out, but they were all swallowed up by the 12 giant Yuan-Chi dragons in front of Machensi's shocked gaze. Others might not know the power of the talisman weapon in her hand, but Machensi herself knew very well that this talisman weapon was definitely not a talisman weapon made by an ordinary Dharma adept that had sealed his own remarkable powers. Instead, it was personally made by her father, the leader of the Pegasus clan, Ma Zhen. Not only was this a defensive talisman weapon, but the golden thorns that shot out from the golden ball were also sealed within it by Ma Jin's own remarkable powers, the divine wind thorn. A talisman weapon that could seal two great magical powers within it meant that the person who made it was not an ordinary person. Not only that, but the leader of the Tenma people had also sealed two great magical powers, one offensive and one defensive, that he had achieved when he had advanced to the Dharma phase and the middle Dharma phase. The value of this talisman weapon was no less than a top-notch spirit-nurturing treasure. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.